All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Hash Church episode 106. I am going to go through my morning rituals here, of course, of muting the YouTube stream as it starts and then sending off the links to all of our wonderful guests that are probably eagerly anticipating the links. I'm sure they're all just properly ready, sitting there anxious and ready to get these links. Maybe not, but in reality, I'm going to send out these links now. Seems like it's taking a little bit of time for the YouTube stream to start going. There it is. Must refresh. Okay, well, I'll refresh. Link that up. Okay, great. Here we go. Sending out the Facebook links. Boom. Sending out the Skype link. That is to Mr. Chimera. And a couple of email links, one to Mr. INDRA and one to Mr. Cool. The Cool of Sub, that is. 237 people in the room. I've got my D-nail heating up as hot can be. And let's get, Skunkman Sam beats Etienne to the punch and comes in first.
Well, I tried because I saw you post that Etienne would be first like usual. I just wanted to see if I could change reality.
You totally changed reality. And you know, one of the reasons at the end of this of the show each week, if you've noticed, it chooses a photo to put as the little avatar for the Hash Church. And very often it's myself or Etienne. And I figured out that it's in the first minute that the first minute of church, when it sees someone, it records that as the picture.
They're slowpoke.
Hey!
I know, that's rather funny. I'm the slowpoke. How's everybody? Happy 106?
Damn, Johnny B, I thought you were in your lab coat. You're in your terry cloth.
Yeah, it's one of those good mornings, you know, doing the grassroots tour here on the island and having a blast. And I was like,
dude, you look like a pimp. I love it.
Oh, it looks like he's in the shower.
Check out the balcony at the hotel here. Check this out. I got my own private balcony.
That's your balcony with no windows?
No, it's like mine. I can sit here. I got the dab rig going. I'm already.
That's awesome.
It's
That's
like
awesome.
The best hotel I've ever been in. I'm like, really? I get my own dab little balcony?
Okay. Right. Johnny B pimping.
Yeah, I'm pimping it out today. Yeah.
I like it. It suits you well.
I figured, you know what? I haven't done the pimp yet. So I was like,
Pimp Church.
Pimp Church. Morning, everybody. And I tried to log in this morning, Sam, and it wouldn't let me go in because you had to be first this time. That's awesome.
That is good. Well, we're going to have a nice episode. I invited a couple of different people in today. I'm hoping Dr. Bob gets the link. I'm very excited to have him come in and share a little bit with us in regards to, you know, sort of his reality and what he's been doing the last, I'm sure for 10 or 20 plus years now. He's definitely a good speaker and has some good abilities. I know Etienne is familiar with him as well.
Etienne, I got a question for you. Okay, now you've heard of the cannabinoid or endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome or whatever it's called. Yes? And if somebody has a malfunctioning FA gene, the mechanism that breaks down the endocannabinoids, then or their body produces too many endocannabinoids, is there an illness related to having too many endocannabinoids?
We've not seen such things, or as we know, overdoses can lead to sleep. So,
and pizza.
And pizza, and munchies, and various other forms.
Well, usually when you look at illnesses, there's a bell curve, you know, on extremes on both sides.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if it was only on one side of the bell. You know?
Oh, I agree. It's just like I found people who are actually allergic to cannabis. You know, some people just like allergic to anything else. They have allergies. So
their body just be on whack and produce way too many. Or what would even be easier is some sort of inhibition of the degradation of it. Or
the you know, reception degradation. There's all kinds of things that can happen in today's pharmacopoeia. You know what I'm saying?
I do know that you can test endocannabinoid levels in vitro in people by using Oh, what Mark uses, a nuclear resonance.
NMR, proton NMR.
NMR.
Correct. That I've just recently read where people are doing that.
Well, perhaps this hypermesis, this, people vomiting and acquiring the urge to sit in water, perhaps that's the other spectrum of cannabis, because it is interesting that cannabis can modulate nausea, can almost destroy nausea so quickly, but then to have on the other end of the stick cannabis giving people nausea, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, I lived with somebody who had hypermesis, and what had happened when she was actually going through childbirth, she was actually having the child, and it used to cause her that cyclical vomiting. It was unstoppable. She would sit there in the hot shower, and then I'd give her some of my hash, and that would help subside it. But besides that, there was nothing. It was just gut-wrenching to watch somebody suffer, and there's nothing you can do.
What you're saying, Etienne, when you're talking about the CVS, cyclic vomiting syndrome, I have a friend that has it, and hash seems to work for her. It's funny, she gets into solvents, it doesn't work, the shatters, it makes her more sick, but she's always wanting hash. And I'm like, and when you just said that, it just kind of made me think, because I do try to help her out here and there, and it's just hard to see somebody who suffers that much. I understand that.
Yeah, it was fascinating to me. I tried getting her all different types of, because I have a dispensary, so we tried every type of thing, and the only thing that was working was actually my mix, where I take and I constantly mix all my concentrates together. This is probably a blend of about 500. And so it's the whole it's the whole spectrum. So for her, it seemed to work, but I would have loved to see science to actually walk it back and see, what was the actual trigger and what was the actual receptor receiving which compound that is actually doing it. Because we know out of the many compounds in there, one of them is actually, or a combination of them are actually unlocking the keys. Or unlocking the lock.
Welcome, Mark, to the room.
Hey everyone, how you guys doing today?
Well, we're doing pretty good. I think it's about that time. Rob would be he'd be thinking, man, these guys have been on for eight minutes and I haven't seen them blow any smoke towards the Vatican.
Okay, let's do that.
So come on.
Actually,
guys.
I did my morning call, right?
We must do our dutiful duty.
Terps.
Which way is the Vatican anyway? Is the Vatican this direction?
All,
or this direction?
all directions.
It's in your heart.
I'm not sure which way it is from where everybody is, but I spoke a long time to Rob on Skype yesterday, and he's in Turkey having fun, working on his documentary of the Turkish hemp industry, and he ain't smoking at all because Turkey's flipped out about Americans right now. They think that they fomented a revolution or a coup attempt, and so he has to be very, very careful in Turkey.
Yes, because we all know coups are often associated with Americans.
Also pigeons. Coo, coo.
Coo, coo. American pigeons.
That was an old Bill Hicks thing,
Yep.
Scattered on the grassy knoll that day were pigeons, and you could hear them in the distance. Coo, coo, coo.
Like 1,000 points of light.
Like 1,000 points of light. Well, I'm ready to have a little bong rip.
What are you flavoring on today?
Oh, a little 120 Congo bubble hash squished into rosin.
Damn, that's sexy.
Yeah.
I got these awesome distillate with some terps that are something made here. Tasty. I got to the island and got hooked up through Potent Industry with some Lindsay OG and some Roji OG. Tried them both, and wow, got some fire here on the island. Really happy.
As I saw Etienne holding up his dabs, but John was talking, I thought it was John holding up his dabs, and I was like, whoa, Johnny B with the Etienne-style dabs. I like it.
Got to come prepared for Hash Church.
Well, someone asked if we could discuss CBD isolates. That's Connor Jones. And what I want to answer Connor right now is that I have invited my friends from Synertech Labs in Colorado. You can check them out on Instagram. They're the guys that make the beautiful almost like a quartz crystal, but it's pure CBD isolate. They are going to come on Hash Church in the next week or two. I told them that it would be best if they could have some isolate crystallized up, nice big crystals to show. And so they're going to be coming on, and we're going to have a big old hour or 2 hours of just discussing isolates. And I may also invite, what was his name now? I may also invite Ninad from the Root Sciences. And if you guys remember a while ago, Brett Maverick went to Root Sciences and he did a video on their short path molecular distillation machine. And these guys have quite a unit. The video is definitely worth checking out if you haven't already checked it out on Brett Maverick's channel. You'll literally be able to punch in short path, molecular distillation, Brett Maverick, and it'll come up. They're also going to be invited onto that show as well. So we'll have a nice here in the next couple of weeks. I want to have a good show on the molecular separation and these sort of
I visited them last week, Mark. I was up there and went to both them and Helderpad, the other folks who make a short path distillation unit. Yeah, the VTA one's real sweet that Root Sciences has.
Yeah, they got a nice
expensive,
unit.
But it's nice. Yeah, it sure is.
160,000 US. I'm actually moderating a panel with Root Science, who's on the panel in a couple of weeks here at the International Cannabis Business Conference in Vancouver.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, on the 14th. Cool.
Is it Sam? Who from Root Science is going to be on there? Yeah.
Ninad. Yeah, Ninad Ashrati. Ninad, N-E-N-A-D, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so
I went and visited them. The guy that was operating the instrument, God, I can't remember his name. Hamilton.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also met
here.
Mike Bishop from Heidolf, the company you just mentioned. He was here at the Lift conference, and going to definitely try to get him on as well. And he's been selling these units for quite some time. Yep, there you go.
Hamilton is a really knowledgeable guy, and their BHO guy is a guy named Corey. This fellow named Corey here. So he's a good guy too. So Corey and Hamilton, yeah, that's a really impressive unit, Mark. Did you actually check it out yourself? Or no, you can't come down to the States.
They invited me to come check it out, and I have a waiver. I could literally send it in and say this is going to be the trip, but I'm kind of waiting for the perfect trip to get my waiver to go over the border, because that will give me 1 year of going over the border, and they're so close that's a trip I could make in an afternoon.
Yeah. And I would assume that, again, if you're making that kind of investment, that you should be allowed to visit the facility that you're going to buy this from. And that's a business thing. And it's not necessarily, I don't know.
They seem pretty generous in that sense. Like, it seems like even if you're not going to buy the unit, they're happy to kind of invite certain people over there to check it out.
I was just thinking about justifying you coming into the States. I mean, if you're making that kind of investment on equipment, you should be allowed to come and see the equipment before you make the investment.
Absolutely. And really, in reality, if you want to inspire people to buy your machine, you would let people who had no plans on buying your machine come see your machine.
Absolutely. Yeah, they would probably want to get as much PR as they possibly can. Yeah, I was impressed with the operation of the instrument. It's really very, very impressive. Has an incredible throughput too. So if you're going to make that kind of level of investment and you're processing that much material, it certainly makes.
What is the throughput? What is the throughput, Mark?
Pardon me?
I said, what is the throughput, Mark?
Yeah, so if you have an unlimited amount of material coming through and, a reasonable work day, I think they were talking about like a 14-hour day, they could make probably about 15 pounds of isolate. 15 to 20 pounds isolate, depending.
Yeah, I have numbers here.
Depends on the efficiency. It depends on the efficiency of your separation, and you have to have completely decarboxylated material going in. But again, if you don't have a whole lot of waxes or fats and it's an easy distillation, one rip does it. Some people do multiple processing through there because you really want to make it really pure, which is going to tie up the instrument longer, obviously.
Right. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to having a chat on it's a strange panel that I'm moderating. I'm hoping on getting Tony onto the panel, which will make it a little bit more homey for me. But I've got one guy from Apex Supercritical, and I've got the guy got the guy from Root Science who cleans up what the guy from Apex creates. So.
Well, and Marcus, you've made a connection with Mike Bishop. You know, Mike Bishop's a good old fish head friend of ours from back in the day. I know him. He's a local boy here. He knows some of my homies. And he works for Hideoff, which is basically the Rotovac people, and they also make all kinds of laboratory equipment. Yep. But they've been asked to upcoming feature on a Discovery Channel segment using their material and talking about winterization. And so we're filming this. It's just happened to be the end of October when Fish is in Las Vegas. That was a wonderful coincidence. But so we're going to do a quick little 25-second segment on an Ed Begley Jr. Show that's going to be on Discovery Channel coming up here in a couple months.
Oh, very nice.
And you'll see me talking about winterization using Hideoff Rotovaps.
Awesome. Yeah, no, Mike was great. I just met him a couple weeks ago at the Lift conference and definitely linked up and made a point on going and seeing him and his girlfriend afterwards. We went and linked up at the Vapor Lounge and had some good conversation.
Absolutely, Marcus. He's a good guy. He's just a right-on dude. He's a fish head like us. So
absolutely, yeah. No, that was noticeable right away. Oh, we got 654 people watching Hash Church at 9:16 on a Sunday morning.
Hideoff's also been sponsoring some of the social events that the American Chemical Society Division of Cannabis Chemistry has been happening. And so these guys certainly see the promise that there's going to be a lot of chemists employed in this industry in years to come. And so Mike is part of that market-facing team that Hideoff has said, hey, we're going to sell road evaporators into this market. We might as well embrace it.
Oh, yeah. Not only that, but I asked him, what do you think this company will think years from now when this branch is one of the largest branches of the entire company? Like, you're going to be a big part of that, Mike. You got to be happy about that. And he was just like, oh, that would be great. If that's the future, that would be great. And I sure think it's definitely likely.
Well, I mean, the road evaporators, there's a lot of companies that sell them, but if you look out there, Hideoff makes really sort of like the Cadillac of them. I don't know about.
Generally, if anything that you're having made in Germany.
Those fuckers got it dialed in, man.
Listen, I'll never forget in my life going to the Herbert Arnold factory with Nate Dizzle and Steve Hops, two amazing glassblowers. And, Martin sent us. He didn't actually come with us from Ruhr. We left from his place in Ruhr, and he said, you got to go check out this factory. But it really sort of opened my eyes. I always knew the Germans were on point for manufacturing and producing almost at a terrifying level. But going to this factory literally freaked me out because it was just impossible. Every aspect of it was impossible. It was so big. It was so huge. The things they were designing in there made no sense. Like, it looked like they were building space stations to float around the Earth.
They were doing chemistry, 200 years ago that, it's just amazing what they were doing way back then. And the Swiss have it dialed in too. And that really a lot of this high end chemical manufacturing equipment, some comes from Switzerland. I know high-end candy manufacturing and chocolate manufacturing, a lot of that stuff comes from Switzerland. But, go back to what you were saying before about CBD isolates, Mark. There's so many different ways to a high CBD cultivar, and you're extracting, however, crystallization is just always a great way. If you can make a crystal out of something, and the beautiful thing is, again, if you're fully decarboxylated, your THC is not crystalline and your CBD is. So that is really a great way of just getting your,
separating.
CBD. Clean. Yeah. I mean, it's like making rock candy, right? You have to make a good,
It's a good purification method, that's for sure.
And Mark, how stable is THC, CBD crystals versus CBD crystals? What's their stability?
I don't really know. I mean, I do know that it readily does decarboxylate just like THCA, but you can melt it. So its melting point is prior to its decarboxylation point. But I think that, again, like anything, the decarboxylation is constantly happening. But as soon as you elevate temperature, it's just going to accelerate it. So it just, the reaction rate just becomes linearly accelerated with temperature.
Yeah,
Excellent.
cool.
I think it really depends, Sam. The question is what is the grade of purity of your CBDA? Can you actually crystallize CBDA in the presence of CBD? And maybe these folks that Mark is bringing on can shed some light on that.
Yeah, I know that when we tested cannabis that we stored in the dark in a cool room, even after 2 years, very little bit was in fact decarboxylated. Most of it was still in THCA. It surprised us, but and very little of it had broken down into CBN also.
That's all a function of how you store it, right?
Well, we kept it in boxes, cool and dark, and
Right.
but all the terpenes, or most of them, were gone after 2 years.
Where were they packaged? Where was this grown in Europe?
It was grown in my greenhouse, correct?
It was grown in green. Yeah. So I'm one of those proponents that whenever you package up the herb, you're basically also packaging a sample of the biome that's around that herb, and so. Right, like what kind of I think when El Soli packages up his stuff down in Mississippi, he brings a whole lot of other stuff along with it, because it seems like the storage conditions in Mississippi are maybe not ideal for cannabis. It starts to degrade. He starts to see decarboxylation like almost instantly, right? Based on his numbers that he's published.
We had low, cool temperatures. And it did decarboxylate a little bit, but surprisingly little, and really hardly any at all CBN.
Right.
Whereas all the terpenes were pretty much gone. It was flat. And
so that's weird. So you got terpene loss, but no decarboxylation on storage.
Correct. Yes. And we stored it for 2 years in big boxes with a kilo or 1.2 kilos of buds on the stick. So it wasn't
in plastic bags. They weren't in plastic bags.
No.
Oh my gosh! Right in the box. Holy shit!
Yeah, that's why I'm saying this.
So then the box just absorbed all the terpenes. The terpenes just got absorbed by a cardboard box, right? You mean craft paper, like brown?
Like a cardboard box. What it actually was, Marcus will have seen them before. They're Algemere flower boxes.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're about 4 feet long by maybe 2 feet wide, and maybe a little more than a foot or so tall.
I have a pretty good photo of like Richard Rose and Rob Clark and Hillary Black and Barge sitting in Rob's apartment, passing one of those boxes around.
Does air get in and out of those boxes?
I mean, a little bit on the ends, because there are finger holes on both ends. There's 2 little oval slots that you can grip the box really easy with.
Yeah, it's surprising that you don't see more cannabinoid degradation, right?
No, but we didn't. We kept looking and kept looking. We really didn't find it.
Yeah, well, you basically enveloped it in a box that was absorbed by all the terpenes absorbed into the box, and kept all the fungi and bugs away from the weed, maybe. Who knows?
Well,
right?
The whole office facility is distinct, because we had 600 kilos there.
Yeah, cardboard is not a good barrier at all, right?
I'll tell you, it's a great desiccant, though.
No, and it's really good for curing cannabis for 3 months in.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't see more rot or mold or smell like mustiness.
No, zero.
Mark, it's the same thing.
It's because the moisture content.
When we put it in, the moisture content was already like 10% or 12% at the most.
Right.
I mean, it was really fucking low.
I mean, I found the same thing.
Right, so you're already in the good zone.
when I started drying water hash in the early days in the Pacific Northwest, it was next to impossible to dry water hash. So coming up with the idea of grating it into powder and then putting it on a thick cardboard, one that wouldn't release fibers. And everyone was like, oh, that's no good. No, it's going to contaminate. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. Well, I photographed that shit with a pretty powerful macro lens. I smoked that shit with an extremely sensitive bioassay. And never did I ever see anything negative in using cardboard to dry my hash. I use pizza boxes.
And cardboard sucks moisture almost as good as a paper towel.
Oh, it sucks moisture. It's a desiccant. It literally pulls it out. And I'll also say that when I was done pulling out the moisture from my water hash, that my cardboard boxes did not in any way, shape, or form smell like terpenes. There was no smell to the box. It was just a cardboard box. And the hash, beautiful, wonderful, tasty, delicious. So, a lot of people trip out on that, I'll tell you.
I wonder if the infusion of the terpenes into the cardboard now renders the cardboard resistant to microbial degradation.
Yeah, I don't know. Interesting question.
Cool.
To me, even after 2 years, the boxes did not smell particularly terpene, although they did have a smell, obviously, because maybe even buds had rubbed on to the side of them or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Because when I put the buds in, they had only been dried for 2 weeks. Then I left them in there for a couple of years, depending on the particular harvest.
Just a couple of years, you know. Sometimes you don't get around to shit. It's like a couple of years. But
well, every individual box had to be labeled with its brutto weight, its whole weight.
Right.
And then it would knock it down, stuff down. If it was a kilo or two when I put it in, when I was done, it would have lost maybe 50 grams or something like that, more of water.
Someone's saying if
it was basically pretty dry, not bone dry, but it was pretty fucking dry. The branches snapped.
Who is that? Is that Chimera that just came in? It's hard to tell. He's sharing his. I think it is Chimera. Well, welcome, Chimera. Not sure what you're doing over there, but it's nice to have you in the room.
He's sharing his screen.
Hash is good. Hash is good. Share the hash. He's trying to find something good to share with us.
As usual.
Pretty good.
I just
or pictures of Morocco, right?
Yeah, to me, it looks like hash drying on a piece of cardboard.
To me, it looks like hash sitting on a metal tin, like a really nice little sort of tin. Morocco. He's sharing Morocco pictures. Yeah, it's a little tray. Very nice. Very nice, Chimera. I have a whole different view on Moroccan hash. I just disliked Moroccan hash forever. Every time someone offered it to me, I was like, it's going to taste like Moroccan hash. I don't like Moroccan hash. It all tastes the same to me. And then the dude that used to always win at Legends, I don't know if he wants us to mention his name on Hash Church, so
don't.
I won't, exactly. But he put some hash in my hand from Morocco, and it was like full melt dry sift, like from any of us. It was completely unbelievable. I had to flip my entire view on Moroccan hash. I'm not going to lie.
He has real problems. When he grows really, really high quality all-female seeds in Morocco, what happens is they have so many terpenes after he dry sifts the hash and he presses it, it either turns whitey or it turns all liquidy. It's just way too high of a terpene content for pressed hash. So what he's having to do is things like dry them in the sun, way radically reduce the terpene content, so it could be treated like normal dry sift and be pressed.
Oh, so what? He wants to lower the terpene content because it greases out?
If he wants to ship it.
Oh, if he wants to ship it, well, fuck that. Holy shit. I guess that's rough. There's got to be, and wouldn't that not change if we had legal mechanisms in place and he could ship that in like cooled containers?
Maybe, but for example, I can remember when I used to make skunk dry sit really super, super clean. If I tried to press it, after a few days, it would start to turn whitey. You know, and even if I was in a really dry atmosphere, it just took a little bit longer. And high temperatures, high humidities, just flip it out. What it's doing is it's absorbing moisture from the atmosphere and it's making it turn whitey.
Hygroscopic.
I just saw one of my friends in Chimera's photos pass by. That was nice to see. That's awesome. Little crop on the side of the mountain. Little Maroc.
Nice and dense, I see.
Well, it's an ecological disaster up in the Rip, but because there's no water and there's no good soil, so they're making it happen anyway.
Mm. That's what do you do? Bring in the soil, bring in the water?
Well, the water you've got to collect when there is water. Any chance you get, any way you can. The soil, what you use is a drip system with NPK.
Mm. Interesting.
Is he on mute or something?
I muted myself. I was just, I needed something to smoke. Had no rollies, no nothing, and I got handed this nice little pipe. So I was just showing it off.
And is that from the girl?
Yes, that's from Lethal Glass.
Don't you want to give her like a shout out and be like?
Of course I do. This is a beautiful little Sherlock, and it's got a cute little frog on there. Just really cool, amazing, and strong glass. Like, just, yeah, nice little pipe. Thank you.
Excellent. No bias. No bias.
No, it's just a good pipe. I like it. It's cool.
Next time you come to Amsterdam, bring it, John. I guarantee I can break any glass pipe.
Ooh. Yeah, you know what? It's.
Oh man, I'll tell you.
I was impressed on how they're packed and stuff like that, and how she ships them around. And I was watching how they were being treated, and she does do some good work. But
the worst ever was on Fish Tour, watching dudes say their pipes didn't break, and they'd like throw them down on the ground time after time. That one time when the pipe broke was just always like, oh, dude. Yeah, probably not the best way to try and sell. I mean, for me, how I would sell a glass pipe isn't showing someone that it doesn't break when you drop it, but I would pack a big bowl and smoke it and go, yeah, that's a nice bowl. I'm going to mute you there, Johnny, just so we don't have to hear the background.
I go one step further. I won't buy a glass pipe unless I'm presuming I'm going to break it within a year.
Oh, geez. Oh, what do you got there, Etienne? The terp cap? That looks like a derby, like a what's it called there? Like the Sheldon Black, a bowler, yeah, like the Sheldon Black hat. I bet they'd be all over buying those.
So I had a friend of mine make one. The original one I was given was a banger, and so this one's made to fit over our D-nail.
Oh shit! Nice.
And so you can inhale and get your terps that are suspended in the top here.
And how is that? Do you like that?
I do, for the aspect that it's light. It's not overwhelming, which, as you know, these terpenes are highly concentrated. So, I mean, just if you get any on your finger, woo! But for the most part, it's been great because it uses just that internal heat on the internal of the ring as it sits on it to evaporate them. Now, I have noticed that inhaling through it does turn my terps a little golden. As opposed to the clear that they started off to be, but
probably from the heat of the bowl heating that glass up.
Yep, but it's again, this is just prototype playing with technology since we've got terps, so we wanted to see.
So what about a two-part piece where you put it on, but then the terp part is the secondary piece that you put on, so it doesn't actually heat up?
Well, it's not only from the heat; it's also from the vaporized cannabinoids being vaporized through
Correct.
the terps.
Right.
But those cannabinoids, are they vaporized through the terps?
Well, it's collecting them and catching them because, like I said, it started off clear, and now, as you can see, I've only used
temperature will turn those yellow. So will oxidization.
Okay.
Without
Well,
any
then
cannabinoid.
that could all be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the cannabinoids are going through the terpenes. They're going right into the hole, and the terpenes are above the cannabinoids. So I would say that if he designed that to split into two, that
the cannabis vaporization is not going through the terpenes, just above it.
That's right.
Okay, I didn't understand.
That's why if he made it a two-piece and the terpenes were simply added at the end and then taken off, I don't think the top part would heat up. But when you put things on here, like for instance, I use just a glass jar, it does not take long before this thing gets hot. And I've got it only at, what temperature are you vaping at, Etienne?
I'm doing about 625.
Oh, okay, so we're close.
I'm keeping it low, and of course, I'm not keeping it on there long, so it's sitting there boiling or anything like that. You can just get the nice flavor of the flavonoids coming across the palate. It's really nice. Although it just makes everything taste like that dominant terpene, though.
Well, you made me want to dip. You made me want to dip. I'm not gonna lie.
And what are we gonna dip?
Well, I just dip whatever I pull out first, and what I pulled out first was Grape Ghost. I'm going to take a little bit of cookies, hash rosin, dip it in the Grape Ghost, which is almost done. Oh, here we go. Let's bring us into this new part of the conversation. What do you guys think of Oregon banning the names of cannabis cultivars that are being directed, or at least they think are being directed at children? And so this is the Skywalker OG and the.
Is it just that it's directed at children, or is it that it's an implied copyrighted name like Girl Scouts?
No, it's kids. It's advertising to kids, and it's actually listed as such. It's something that we expected back in the day. We had somebody back in the day, no kidding, brought in this stuff called Pussycat, and it sounds harmless enough, but next thing you know, the lady bud tenders get people coming up. Hey, how's your pussy smell today? How's your pussy look today? What's the pussy like? And next thing you know, you're like, oh shit, we're in an HR moment. On top of that, you realize the silliness of some of these names, like God's Pussy and some of these other ones that have come along, that it was inevitable to, change name. Look, I won the actual Cannabis Cup with Girl Scout cookies. Okay, so to actually have that name banned.
Have you ever crossed that with God's Pussy? I'm not going to say live what it would be, but we all know.
We know. Etienne's just like, hey, welcome, Chimera. Thanks for sharing those pictures. I put them up as often as I could.
But it's inevitable that, these name changes are going to happen. I mean, we've always been discussing this back when we were on the Medical Cannabis Safety Council, when we started with testing back in 2007. One of the things the other departments we had was nomenclature, because we're talking about all these different types of phenotypes that are named randomly, and these names are out there, like green crack and others. They're out there in the ether, and so I can't put green crack on it, so it becomes green queen. You see what I'm saying? So it's something that dispensary have been doing for a while, depending on if you have various genetics that come through the door all the time. But I'm surprised, honestly, that it's taken this long for them to enact something like that regarding, names, because we saw when back in the early 2000s, gentleman Mickey Martin with Tainted, and Tainted edibles were all a bunch of mocks of Mr. Goodbar. It was Mr. It was all different things. Just taking those logos and just slightly modifying. So back then we thought that inevitably they were going to come after us in the sense of names, or at least there it was copyright. But now with advertising being a no-no to kids, I'm surprised Colorado hasn't done this before Oregon, honestly.
I thought it was a little bit weak sauce, but at the same time, you know, something Chimera said months or weeks ago on Hash Church, which really resonated with me, was that, you know, the names are all great and all, but really let's get to the point where they are called the constituents that make them up. Let us see the full list of what cannabinoids and what terpenes actually are, because that will be a new way to recognize cultivars, more so than grape goo or...
We're still left with the question, how do we therefore name these things? You know, do we go to Latin names? Do we still stay with these silly names that are owned in the ether? But yeah, but wine they're named after certain grapes or blends.
No, they're not.
Grapes.
They're named whatever they want. They're named pig snout. They can be named anything.
I'm talking the real connoisseurs of
that
wine.
Is the real connoisseur stuff.
That's the real connoisseur stuff.
It's $25 a bottle.
Hey, welcome D420K, Chimera, and Subcool to the room. Thanks for showing up, guys.
Morning, guys.
Morning, bong rep, mother lovers.
Yes, indeed. That's yeah, I don't know what to say about it, Sam. I mean, obviously we have to have names, but I really do. Oh, and welcome Todd McCormick as well.
Yeah.
I thought I saw him.
Sam, you coined skunk. And it was basically just off of scent. Is that why you decided to call it skunk? Because we're discussing names.
I mean, I didn't coin the name skunk because there were varieties called indica or skunk around for a few years before I named skunk #1.
What did you call it before you called it skunk?
It didn't have it. It was a 3-way hybrid, and before that, it was only its parents.
Hey, I want to welcome Dr. Bob into the room. Just showed up.
How you doing, guys?
Hey, thanks for showing up, man. That's awesome. I wanted to maybe read a little bit of your biography to let everyone know who Dr. Bob is. Dr. Robert Melamede has a PhD in molecular biology and biochemistry from the City University of New York. Dr. Melamede retired as chairman of the biology department at University of Colorado Springs in 2005, where he continues to teach and research cannabinoids, cancer, and DNA repair. And he's recognized as a leading authority on the therapeutic uses of cannabis and has authored and co-authored dozens of papers on a wide variety of scientific subjects. So big welcome to Dr. Robert Melamede into the room. We're stoked to have you.
But see, that leaves out all the important things. The important thing is that I'm an old stoner, I'm an old hippie, and I start off my day with 100 milligrams of high quality oil, as I've done. You know, I've been getting high for 50-something years now. I'm going to be 69 in another couple of months, 2 more months. So
wow.
And do you take oil to get high or for medical reasons?
Well, for both, because I think getting high is what we should be. You know, the higher we get, the clearer our minds are, and the more we can apply the knowledge of what we really are and where we're going to get to some kind of functional ends where we can all benefit.
Beautiful.
Does everybody else, does his mic seem a bit low?
No, I can hear him good, but I have headphones on.
It sounds a little low. Dr. Melamede, what made you decide to go into cannabis?
Well, I started college when I was 16 years old, and that's the same year I started smoking cannabis. And what I found was it just always seemed a wonderful thing to me. And then I used psychedelics. I'm an old hippie, and I found all of those things tickled my fancy and set me in the direction that I wanted to go in. But my whole life I've been curious about what is life. And
Did you listen to the Grateful Dead?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay.
My own acid.
Continue.
But I was always
Beautiful.
curious what life is, and I now feel that I have a very functional and thorough understanding of what life is and what evolution is and the role that the endocannabinoid system plays in our very existence. So that's what I do. I try to share that knowledge because I can apply it to health. You know.
Well, I watched a couple of your videos just in the last few days. The one on diabetes, which I sent to my friend who's in the room right now, D420K, in the orange shirt like myself. Very, very really great little 10-minute video on breaking it down. I was, you just have a great knowledge and a vast knowledge that you're able to go in really deep and sort of explain these things on a different level. And that's one of the things that I really appreciated about you.
Well, that's how I need to understand it. If I can't understand it, you know, when I'm sitting here stoned out of my mind and have a clear, simple understanding of what's going on, then it doesn't work for me either, you know? So it's what I do all my whole life. I just try to get high and understand what that is and to be healthy and to be alive and see how that integrates and what we can do with it. And, you know, I've gone through a bunch of different health issues and I apply my knowledge to that and I can see that it's correct. And I help other people do the same.
I also liked your perspective. You've got a video called "The Age of BLPs."
Yeah, the blips and the flips.
The blips and the flips, right? So that was also a really cool video, and it reminded me a little bit of Dr. David Allen's Magdalene hijacking that he talked about that occurs in the brain. The way you were sort of talking about how, and I could never break it down as well as you could if you wanted to give a little 5-minute on what that little video was about in regards to some people requiring these compounds and to.
Well, the starting point that everybody has to understand is that our endocannabinoid system literally regulates every single thing in your body from conception until death. So, you know, the most fundamental aspects of being alive, eating food, for example, that's why you get the munchies. The fact that psychoactive cannabinoids are in mother's milk tells you that this shit is important because mother's milk came with mammals. And what do mammals' characteristics? Well, they take good care of their children. And nature has seen fit to put psychoactive cannabinoids in the essence of the evolutionary selective process, mother's milk.
Those aren't psychoactive. Those aren't psychoactive cannabinoids. That's an anandamide.
Well, that happens to be psychoactive. It does bind to the CB1 receptor, and it does all of the things that that cannabinoids do.
Do you know anybody who's ever gotten high from anandamide?
Yeah.
I mean, by taking it, not just their own.
Well, all of us do to a degree, and that's kind of where I'm going with this. You see, what the cannabinoid receptor does in our brain, in particular, is it allows us to have a brain because it regulates the calcium channels that are involved in activating things, be it muscles, nerve transmission, hormone release, everything that requires action requires calcium. And if you make too much activity, you make too many free radicals. And that fucks up the brain in particular because the brain is in a very sensitive state. Feel your head, it's always hot, right? Well, the endocannabinoid receptors first appeared with the appearance of vertebrates. And if you look at the brain as you go up the evolutionary scale, you see there's always more and more cannabinoid activity. It's like the major neurotransmitter system in our brain. We don't teach it in medical school. We don't teach it in schools in general. I mean, it's totally retarded. We've left out like the very heartbeat of our existence. We've excluded it from our reality. I mean, how fucked up can you possibly be, right?
Well, it wasn't accidental, I'm sure.
Aren't endocannabinoids found in animals lower that don't have vertebrae, like sea urchins?
Everything has the biochemistry for making there's a whole bunch of lipid pathways where things get transformed from this to this to that to that. And all of those transformations have different associations and effects. So back protozoa have endocannabinoids, anandamide, if I'm not mistaken. I have to check that to make sure. I'm pretty sure it was anandamide, not 2-AG. But the point here is that they didn't formalize the ability of that flowing biochemistry. See, what I talk about is what's called the physics of life. How did life come about? And it turns out that flowing energy organizes matter. And that's what led to life. And as organized matter interacts with its environment and changes the environment changes it. And there are these constant selective pressures going back and forth. And the cannabinoid system became the solution for how can we make more complicated brains without making too much heat. And they do that by controlling, fine-tuning the energy production by controlling the calcium circuitry. So anyway, some people naturally have more cannabinoid activity in their brain in terms of certain circuits that regulate open-mindedness, the ability to take in new information. So it's an intrinsic truth that half the population will have more and half will have less. And because evolution has always selected for more, the people with less are the primitive people. And unfortunately, those are the people who run the world, with aggression and hostility and the lack of cooperativity, which is the very essence of how molecules create organization. They cooperate with one another. It's that basic to our existence, and yet people can't do it because we've got stuck in this sidetrack of stupidity that is the manifestation of the blips, the backward-looking people who are cannabinoid deficient, and they naturally are the ones who try to control the more advanced mindsets of peace and freedom and love, because they extract their wealth as the illusion for how they can feel safe. See, because they don't make enough pot to be optimistic, so they're stressed by everything, so they don't want any change. And these are the people who run the world.
That's a gross generalization that I don't think there's really any scientific basis to
I can
support
dispute you on that very readily.
So you're saying that anybody that's cannabinoid deficient are essentially the followers, and anybody that's cannabinoid over stimulating are the world leaders? I mean, that's pretty much what you're saying.
I said the opposite of that. You totally misunderstood. I said exactly the opposite. The leaders of the world today are the people who were advanced more in the past, but they're no longer appropriate for today. You know, they may have had the ability to organize and control things and build great cities and blah, 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 but they did it through control rather than through harmony.
So where's the evidence that those, where's the evidence that those people, where's the evidence of any type that those people have altered cannabinoid biosynthesis pathways?
Well, there's a number.
I mean, you must have a single source for that.
Show that if you look at, pardon me, for example, knockout mice. Let's look at knockout mice. Knockout mice are mice where you eliminate a gene. So you can make mice that have no CB1 receptor, so they can't get high at all. So they essentially would represent what our government is trying to impose on us: no high at all. But what happens to be true is that our CB1 receptor is always turned on. It doesn't need anandamide or anything else to turn it on. It's always turned on to a certain level. And it's also true that there are what we call polymorphisms, variability in the genes. So intrinsically, some people will be more active and others will be not active. Those are intrinsic truths. And then we also know that with these knockout mice, they die prematurely, dramatically so, and that they're so stressed that they just sit and shiver. They don't want to move because they don't want to experience any change, because change is too much of a stress when you don't have enough CB1 activity. And then along those lines, you know, in order to be politically correct,
you're taking a very complicated system and attributing a whole bunch of attributes to it that I don't think that there's any evidence to show that's the case. But
well, and I'm trying to provide you with some of the evidence. So
okay, do you have some papers that you could list?
I have to go look them up to give you the name, but if you look up, for example, the knockout, look up CB1 knockouts. Yeah,
I'm a member of the ICRS. I've been studying the endocannabinoid system for a good 15 years, so I know all about the knockout mice and all that kind of stuff.
So are you familiar with the work of Ilya Prigogine and Far from Equilibrium Thermodynamics, which is what provides the foundation for life?
As it relates to cannabinoid pathways?
As it relates to everything.
Well,
can I interject something for a second, guys? You know, not to have a hostile conversation. You know, Bob, welcome to the show. Chimera, nice to have you on always. You know, I don't think there's enough knowledge, and there hasn't been the allotted scientific research done on actual humans. You know, knockout mice are nice, but we're not nice. And the reality is that our governments have inhibited our ability to actually find out if there is a nexus between a lack of cannabinoids and or our ability to make natural cannabinoids and our behaviors on that level. And I kind of get what Ryan's saying, that, you know, trying to say all world leaders are just cannabinoid deficient, you know, it's a little bit of a stretch.
I'm not saying all world leaders are. I'm saying we are. I'm saying all people in general are. And the fact that we're dying from inflammatory diseases shows us that we need more cannabinoids right now. It's not a drug at this point in our existence. It's a necessary nutrient.
Right. And, you know, okay, so that was a great, well, do you think, that would be my next question, do you think one day we will look at cannabinoids like we look at vitamins and minerals?
I think we'll look at it more like, you know, food, because we need those fats. You know, we need to get those essential fatty acids.
EFAs were a second coming of kind of realization in our nutrient. We didn't really catch on to essential fatty acids into the 80s and 90s, and publicly, you know, socially, we're still kind of stupid about it as a whole. But vitamins and minerals came along mid-20th century, EFAs late 20th centuries, and now do you think cannabinoids could come and be the 21st century's, you know, EFAs and vitamins for a human because of the endocannabinoid system?
Well, I would say it's more fundamental than that. And the reason being, and this is a distinction that I've tried to present to the ICRS over the years when I used to bother to go to those talks.
How many years were you a member?
Probably from when they first started.
Well, I've been a member for 25 years. I don't remember you 25 years ago, Bob.
Well, I was at UVM here with Rick Musty, so I was a member as far as, I can't remember exactly when I joined, but I remember when they began, and Ethan Russo had the cannabinoid.
By the time Ethan Russo was a decade later.
Pardon me? Well, maybe I'm not from the beginning. I don't know.
No, I'm just curious. It makes no difference. I was really just curious because I remember I remember seeing you a few times later on.
I've given talks at the ICRS and various other things, but my ideas are based on physics, and the physics is not generally accepted because people don't know it. And so what I do at this point is I read constantly because I'm retired. On my computer here, I've got 26,000 articles in my database. And what I've done is I've integrated that physics with biology. So out of these 26,000 articles, 13,000 are cannabis specific, and the other 13,000 support the ideas that I talk about. So I'm a very conservative scientist, and I can back up everything I say without any doubt.
Well, I personally what you were saying kind of resonated with me the same way it resonated with me when David Allen said it in a particularly different way. He called it the Magdelic hijacking in the brain and the switch of flight or flight being like stuck in position, and just people that felt like they had the urge to control. I've always felt that people who wanted to be in power definitely had something different going on in either their brains, their bodies, their souls, whatever. It seems like it takes a certain type of person to want to control all of the other people. And I come more from the school of psychedelics myself, where I just never really felt that urge to want to control people who were around me. I much more felt like I liked interacting and helping and building and creating more than, you know, policing.
Exactly. And that is a different philosophy. And that different philosophy comes naturally as a function of your stress levels. You know, if you're too stressed, what you're always trying to do is to protect yourself from more stress. And stress ultimately is a free radical generator. And what people don't get, and it's certainly not generally accepted, but I can prove it all. It's scientifically. And it's very important for people to understand this, is that everything in our lives, in all living systems, is regulated homeostatically by free radicals. You know, years ago, we only saw the negative side, and over the past decade or more, we've come to appreciate their role in signal transduction. But I'm saying it's beyond that, because what you have to understand is when flowing energy organized as matter. And you can see this in terms of what's known as inorganic oscillating reactions, all right? I should be on my computer. I could show you some of this shit. Let me, if you're interested. Anyway, the point here is that there's always a balance of opposing forces, and flowing energy generates free radicals when you make it efficiently via the electron transport system, which is the only way our brain generally uses. We like sugar because we make quick energy via the electron transport system. It's efficient. That's why our head doesn't overheat. But you have to counter that. Otherwise, you make too many free radicals and the cells undergo apoptosis and die. So there are different ways that we counteract free radical production, not simply via antioxidants, but by actually changing the metabolic pathways that generate the energy, which is the flow that gives us the organization that counts for life, okay? So what cells do is, on the one hand, they make antioxidants, glutathione, et cetera, to sop up free radicals as they're being made. But on the other hand, when certain limits are reached, the body senses all of these different damages, because free radicals react with DNA, RNA, protein, lipids, and there are other components of the cellular complexity that recognize those damaged components and then alter the flow of the biochemistry so that you don't make too many. And one of the most significant things that occurs is the cells turn on fat burning, and they shut down the electron transport system. And going on with fat burning is a process called autophagy, self-eating. And what it is, it's so simple and it's so cool. It's really a recycling system. So what the cells are doing is they recognize their damaged components and then they recycle them. So one of the consequences of recycling is that you don't have to go back to the beginning to make things, you know? You don't have to mine the bauxite to get to the aluminum. You just remelt the aluminum. It's more energy efficient. So by shifting into fat burning, on the one hand, we're burning up our garbage. And in doing that, we repurify the organization of the cell. In other words, the cell becomes more negentropic. And always, for cells to even exist, what the cell has to do, it has to, in order to maintain its negative entropy state, its organization, it has to spit out more disorder to the universe. In other words, the entropy of the universe has to increase. And a system can maintain its organization as long as it makes the universe stupider quicker.
I need to hang out with
That's
you.
One of the guiding realities. So the key here is this, is that fat burning turns on the recycling system. And fat burning is turned on by the CB2 receptor. It's that simple. What goes on is a constant balance in cells. If you look, you know, people talk about the CB2 receptor as the peripheral receptor or the immune receptor, but in reality, what has been demonstrated is that any tissue that's damaged will typically turn on the CB2 receptor. Why is that? Because damage is caused by and causes excess free radical production, and the cells are trying to protect themselves by turning on fat oxidation and a lower level of free radical production while they clean up their shit by burning their garbage. And this is the reason why we can completely control, you know, and when you talk about the ICRS, you know, blah, stuff, I've tried to explain this to people over the years. We can completely control HIV, completely, by using ridiculous doses of cannabis, all right? And I'm doing this with people, all right? And when my friend doesn't, this guy has had he's had HIV for 26 years. He's an exceptional human being. He's got an IQ of 186. And he was he had to get off all of the existing HIV regimens because he was resistant to all of them. That was 6 years ago. And we were lobbying in Washington, D.C. for a biotech bill. And he came down with a Kaposi sarcoma. That's a herpes viral infection that people get when they have no immune system. All right. So that's the thing that killed everybody back in the day before the antiretrovirals. You'd see the purple blotches on people. It's like, looked like a skin cancer. It's really a vascular tumor.
Are you saying that herpes killed people?
Yeah. herpes sarcoma, herpes that causes Kaposi sarcoma. There's different herpes viruses, you know, many different ones, but there's a specific one, herpes sarcoma, is caused by a particular herpes virus. But in any event, when he came down with that, I always have oil with me because I have a genetic issue. I'm HLA-B27 that predisposes me to arthritis and psoriasis and shit like that, which I have all of those. But anyway, he came down with the Kaposi, and I said, put this oil on it. And he did. And this guy, among many other things, is a pastor at Saddleback Church, the church that inaugurated Obama. And he's also a Hell's Angel as well. There's a lot of stories here. But anyway.
Was this neat oil or was it formulated?
No, it was just basically the raw oil. No, not refined, so it was dark, sticky. I call it the tar, you know.
Okay.
And we put that on, and I go back to Colorado. I was still living in Colorado. I'm not in Colorado anymore. I'm in Vermont. And he went back to New York. I get a phone call. He goes, Bob, what the fuck is going on here? I'm holding a Kaposi in my hand. They're not supposed to fall off. I said, well, I was telling you, you know, because I understand how this stuff works because I understand the physics of life, all right? I said, what you need to do is you need to start eating this in high quantities and turn on fat burning, because most of these viruses, like HIV and herpes, they have evolved in the differentiated state, meaning the sugar burning state where you make energy efficiently. And their whole metabolic pathways are all geared towards that sugar burning mode. And when you turn on fat burning, then you disrupt that. And in fact, we completely control his HIV. He's been on only the oil now, no antiretrovirals for 6 years, along with nutraceuticals that supplement the fat burning. And he now has a 0 HIV viral load, completely undetectable, even with a spinal puncture. The guy also happens to have a PhD in molecular epidemiology. And his Kaposi is completely controlled, except when he doesn't take oil. He's been eating at least 1 gram a day of oil for the past 6 years. When he just got back from the HIV conference in South Africa, and he didn't take any oil for 2 weeks, and he had 16 Kaposis come up. And we had to make sure and get him oil because he was out of oil. And you know, what happens is the Kaposi, you get it internally eventually, and that's what kills you when it hits your organs. So what this crazy fuck does, and he's done this once before, he ate in one day 60 grams of high quality oil. Okay, and he goes basically into a cannabis coma for a few days, and he comes back and his Kaposis have all fallen off because it's very painful when they fall off. So now he's back to normal. He's got his oil supply again, and he's happy. And the one thing that bugged me for the first 2 or so years is I kept telling him, I said, David, how come you still have, you know, the dyslipidemia? People who are on the antiretrovirals, they get a humpback and they get organ fat. I said, that should all be going away. Well, now he doesn't have it anymore. It's all completely gone. So, you know, we can do things with metabolic manipulation because everything that we are comes from metabolism. And what metabolism does is it turns on your various epigenetic that correspond with metabolic state that a cell is existing in. And in doing that, the genes that are exposed, the genes that are being transcribed, are more predisposed to mutations, because whether it be at the replicating fork or transcriptional fork, when you have single-stranded regions and you're also generating free radicals, you are going to have those regions susceptible. And when you wind up having strand breaks, which are even caused by a stalled transcription fork, you promote recombinational events, which then lead, especially in controlling regions, to the gene amplifications and other changes that lead to evolution. There's a very simple story that ties everything together, and we have all the practical demonstrations because we make it work in different forms. But I don't work within the system anymore. Fuck them, because they're all closed-minded.
Someone asked a question in the private chat here. It was MC Mike West. He said, ask Dr. Bob about the endocannabinoid equilibrium and hypermesis. I guess.
Yeah.
What you thought about that?
I think that it's a real phenomenon, and I don't fully understand it, but I definitely believe it's real. I know myself, I've always been predisposed to gagging. I've got a very simple, easy gag reflex, even with the dentist, over years and years. So for me, I know that if I eat certain wheat products in the morning, it tends to make me nauseous. But as your immune system and your nervous system, they're all tied together. I don't understand exactly why it's doing that, but I definitely believe certain people have a predisposition to that. Yes.
Excellent. Well, that answers that for Mike.
I also wanted to chime in. I think something that's really interesting that Dr. Bob's talking about, and I'm not sure how much studies are out there, but this the fact about stress, and if we look at just cannabis and what it does for us in a really simple manner for many of us when we talk about wellness and cannabis, is controlling stress, and if you look at what that does when you're talking about free radicals and the different things that it can affect the human body and the systems, stress can make us go all kinds of directions. And, simply put, even daily users, people that aren't using it for HIV or cannabis, it's a attunement of our body. And at least for me, I know when I have access to product and cannabis, my stress level is completely controlled, and I'm sure it does wonders for what you were talking about, in the whole system. So
well, that's the deal. It's everything is holistic, and our mind leads the way.
Has there been any studies though related to cannabis and stress, and then linking it to what
absolutely.
You said? Okay.
No, that's universally accepted. I think that it has the ability to relieve different kinds of stress. And if you just look, you see, the whole medical industry is all backwards. Their whole understanding is guided not by understanding that we are flow-dependent structures, but rather they look at everything from a static point of view. If you've ever looked at a metabolic map, you got that intense swirl of all the biochemical pathways, but that's how they look at things, statically like that. In fact, all of those pathways that you're looking at are flowing, and that flow that's occurring is very dynamic and self-adjusting and homeostatic. It's like, if you take a psychedelic, take some LSD and you watch the fluidity, when you watch the colored flowing harmony, that's what's happening in our biochemistry. And it's only it's how do we enhance that in a positive direction. But in terms of like psychological disorders, the antidepressants and shit like that, they work on the metabolic level. And in many cases, they're doing exactly the same thing that cannabis does, but because cannabis is part of our flow, because of the endocannabinoid system, etc., in a more harmonious way, it doesn't have the negative side effects. You can give a depressed person 5 milligrams of a THC candy, and the depression's gone for many people. I mean, it's so simple. And then
it's hard to
toxic drugs.
It's hard to not believe. I don't personally need anyone to make a study that says cannabis can relieve stress, because I've personally I've experienced it through my own bioassay, like at least 150,000 times.
100,000 times, yeah. No, I was just curious if anyone did a study linked from the use of cannabis by controlling stress, what it actually did with free radicals and everything else.
What you can look at is cortisol and all of those pathways. And, I'd have to look and refresh my brain of the specifics. But in general, the cortisol pathways, what are some of the things? Just think about what you know, okay? People who are taking a lot of corticosteroids, they have bone deterioration, or they're getting fat. Well, what does that tell you? Why do people get fat? It's very, very simple. They get fat because they're taking in too many carbohydrates. They're not taking in enough fats and not enough of the good fats, which is why ketogenic diets are good for you, and why the Atkins diet, which is just nothing but fat, is good for your heart. It's because when you turn on fat burning, you don't make fat. You see, the fat that's clogging people's arteries, that's coming because they're eating sugar, not because they're eating fat. The body makes the sugar so that it doesn't have to burn the sugar, because when it burns the sugar via the electron transport system, it makes too many damaging free radicals. So what your body does is it takes some of that flow and redirects it into synthesizing fat, because it's protecting it. It's protecting you from too many free radicals. And what happens with diabetes is, especially like insulin resistant diabetes, the cells have sustained sufficient damage that their homeostatic mechanisms are saying, I don't want any more free radical damage. I'm not going to take up any more sugar because you're killing me. But meanwhile, the pancreas is saying, oh, there's too high a level of osmotic activity caused by the sugar in your blood. We got to get rid of the sugar. So we'll piss some out, and then we'll turn on insulin and tell the cells to burn it. But if the cells are already damaging themselves too much, they say, I don't want any more. So they shut down the transport mechanisms. You know, it's all this big hallucination of survival. And so that's how you get insulin-resistant diabetes. I've got 2 friends who were insulin-dependent diabetics who now don't take insulin. Their sugar levels are normal, and they're losing weight because they've turned on fat burning with sufficient cannabis oil by eating it.
Well, it's interesting you were talking about hyperdoses, because one of the conversations I had with Indra, who just came in, his avatar is the photo of, what is that, George Harrison or something?
Yeah, that's him at 22.
Nice, nice. So yeah, he was just telling me the other day how he's also been doing hyperdosing. Although you were hyperdosing with your friend with non-activated oil, correct? Indra?
Oh no! These are all activated oils.
No, I know you. I knew you were that your friend had, Dr. Bob, but Indra was saying that his friend had been doing unactivated.
I'm sorry.
And having also some pretty good results.
Well, the way I started using the unactivated was I got a number of people that came to me who said that they had babies and extreme elderly parents, and they had given them the activated, and they weren't happy with what happened, especially the elderly folks. So I started giving them the unactive, which is all mine that I make comes out unactive to start with, and then it has to be activated by heat. And so I started giving them larger doses, and one of the elderly people who had colorectal cancer started doing up to 1/8 of a cup a day, and in 42 days. All of that went away and stopped, and they started feeling better. Went to the doc. The doc said, "I don't know what's happening, but it looks like you're remissing." And this happened, I don't know. I mean, over 15 years that I handed it out like that, secretly to people. I got a lot of those stories. People who had Crohn's disease. It chased me quite a bit, and in the beginning I started giving the people that had Crohn's the hash, and then I transitioned them to the oil. And all the Crohn's disease people, who I still keep supplied, many people, all say the same thing, that it's making their lives livable. So that's how I got to that conclusion. I didn't do it scientifically, and it's all anecdotal evidence. So don't.
No, but that's more important, you see, because this is what bugs my ass. The FDA, which is entirely populated by, industry people, they're going to take a drug and they're going to take a certain amount of it, and you're going to test it in a subset of people under a certain defined set of conditions, and then they're going to determine whether or not there's a statistically significant effect. And if there's a statistically significant effect, then it's a good medicine. Well, let's look at some examples. You know, they're looking at giving somebody something for MS, and so that they'll urinate less frequently. The drug that was approved gave them 1/10 less a piss per night. So every 10 days, they had 1 piss less. That's statistically significant. This is horse shit, man. This is just stupid shit. You know, and then they test things on, they don't test them on children. The vaccines that they give to the military aren't even tested on anybody except for the military. The world is in an entirely insane situation, driven by narrow-minded people who want to control and regulate everything. Cannabis is totally non-toxic. My friend took 60 grams of oil. You know, he's like eating 50 grams of THC, and the doctors are worried if you take 20 milligrams of THC. Whole different world. But you know what? I'm seeing cancer cured much more frequently than the doctors can do it. And people are doing it for themselves, to themselves. And they're walking. I had one guy, he was scheduled for surgery for his colon cancer, and he started on the oil, and then they went and did the surgery, and they took out a foot of his colon, and they said, oops, no cancer.
Sorry, go ahead.
We've had people shit out colon cancers and stomach cancers. People cough up lung cancers.
Listen, you know, they told me that I had cancer twice at the VA. They were absolutely positively sure. They brought me in. They took a picture of my skin on my back. They sent it down to the San Francisco people who looked at it and said, oh, yeah, that's cancer. Come in. We're going to do something. And the week I was going to go, I had been taking these ultra doses. I've been drinking a quarter or eighth of a cup, and sometimes up to a quarter of a cup a day. And the week before I was going to go, I passed, or as you said in the vernacular, I shit out a tumor of some sort. And I fished it out of the toilet and had a good look at it, and it clearly was some kind of a tumor. And so I went in the following week, and they looked me over and they took the pictures again. And the actual, they don't have very many actual skin doctors at the VA, so they brought somebody in, and the guy came in and he looked at my back and he turned around and said to the nurse, are you sure this is the right patient? And she said, and he looked.
What kind of cancer was it? Do you remember?
Yeah, what cancer? It was
melanoma.
The stuff that was on my nose and the skin on the back was the bad kind of melanoma. It was the bad kind that supposedly ramps up and kills you pretty fast. But it completely disappeared, and they've looked at it 3 times now, and they can't find it. And I have diabetes as well, and I keep my diabetes in control by these massive doses. And I'm a believer in more is better. Maybe you can say what you will, call me names, point fingers, but it works for me.
It works for a lot of us, and that's the thing. Yeah, yeah. Look at it. I don't know if you can see these pictures here. Can you see that?
Not really. The phone's moving quite a bit, but if you want to give, those are cancers, eh?
That was one woman who had a little skin cancer. If you see the first one, and then she put the oil on it, and it turned into that big balloon. What's going on there is different cancers respond differently to when you alter their metabolism. So squamous cell cancers, for example, when you put oil on squamous cell, they respond totally different than basal cell. You put oil on basal cell and they fall off, literally. They just fall off within anywhere from a few days to 3 weeks. When you put it on a squamous cell, it makes them grow. So that woman's nose, she's Australian, and you get these fair-skinned limeys in the Australian sun, and they all come down with skin cancer. And her whole family grew up on a farm, on a sugarcane farm. So both her brothers, her sisters, her mother, her father, they all have skin cancer. And she had previous ones taken off. And then she went and did the oil for a few different basal cells over time, because she says, oh, you don't have to worry about skin cancer anymore. You know, you just put the oil on and they fall off. So she knew she was getting another one in her nose there, and she put it on, but instead of falling off, it started to grow. And we had already had experience. I'll show you another picture.
So was she able to,
sister.
Did she able to deal with that? Like, what happened with that?
I'm going to show, well, if you look at the end, can you see the last picture there?
Oh, yeah.
You see, it's completely gone. Wait, the one I'm showing you here was a basal cell. Hold on. Over here. Can you see that one?
Yep. A little bit of red.
Completely gone. So it grew, it turned into that bubble. And at that point, I'm freaking out, you know? I'm saying, shit. I said, put some hydrogen peroxide on it, because that'll give it a free radical overload, because these cells are slow in being killed. What happens is they undergo necrosis instead of apoptosis, and it turns into a rotting, smelly mess. So she puts the hydrogen peroxide on, and within an hour, the whole thing collapsed. You know, so that's what you see. And then it just eventually heals up and goes away.
Wow.
You know, so if you look at this one here, see that was the oil was put on it, and then it started to grow. This was on her sister's arm. This one we knew was a squamous cell beforehand. And at that time, I thought, oh, gee, it must be just expelling it from the body. But no, what it's doing is it makes it grow, and all of that dark stuff are cells that are necrosing. And eventually, the whole top of the tumor fell off, and then it healed up, and you know, she's got her doctor's certificate that it's all gone. So we do this stuff routinely, and we don't give a damn about the FDA. You know, these are real world experiments. And I'll tell you something very, very interesting that's going on now. The government doesn't even know what they've done, but they've done something that's going to really be quite remarkable. The people who are more open-minded and who want to take cannabis, who I would say are the flips, okay? They are going to use more and more of the state healthcare systems that allow cannabis. They're going to be going to the dispensaries. It's already been demonstrated in Colorado that they have saved the government over $100 million by people choosing to spend money out of their own pocket to get the relief that they don't get for free or whatever they're paying via the healthcare system. So we're going to have people who are not going to want to embrace cannabis, who I would say are the blips, the backward-looking people. They will continue using the national pharmaceutical system that the government is fostering by keeping cannabis schedules. Whereas the more open-minded, stoner-oriented people will be healthy, happy, and less expensive. So we've created a national experiment now that will demonstrate what we've already seen. You know, cannabis users already have lower levels of diabetes. They have smaller waistlines. Why is that? Because they burn more fat because of the CB2 receptor. It's all very, very simple.
Aren't we smarter too?
The experiment is being done right now, and they don't know it, and it'll be clear what the results are.
Aren't we smarter because we're less stressed, so we can take in and retrieve more important information, and because our minds are more well tuned with our environment?
Absolutely.
We're actually a more efficient human being on planet Earth.
Well, that's why it's always been selected for. You have to understand what natural selection is. It doesn't select for the strongest, and it doesn't select for the smartest. It selects for the most adaptable. And that's what the cannabinoid receptors gave us when the vertebrates first appeared, because you have you have CB1 receptors everywhere. And that's because most of us, our movement forward in time comes from the differentiated state. But we have to fall back to the less differentiated state in order to, you know, recycle and clean up our act. It's the same thing in society. Everything's a fractal of everything else.
I know I wrote my patent completely stoned when I wrote it, and it took me weeks, but I was stoned the entire time.
If that's any indication, you should write patents stoned.
What was your patent on?
He does.
I wrote the worldwide patent on oil and fat extraction method and means. I'm the guy, Dr. Bob, who I'm not bragging. I'm just going to tell you who I am. That's
I don't
all.
know. Tell me the name so I hear the name.
My name?
Yeah.
My name's John Davis.
John Davis.
I wrote the worldwide patent on oil extraction, and I'm also the guy back in 1998 named INDRA who released it on the World Wide Web.
Cool.
Yes, indeed. Many people have been making oil that way since. It was interesting because it was quite the timing. I started my company, Bubble Bags, which was like trying to promote water extraction with ice. And literally 3 months after starting that company, he released this method, just like not to in any way to like be like, I'm going to put that guy out of business. And not that he did put me out of business, because he didn't. But it was definitely like, I remember myself starting to create more free radicals than maybe I should have been at the time when when he first released the method. I was like, what the fuck?
Now, I'm tell me what the method is. My brain is not linking the name with the method.
Oh, it's a butane extraction. He basically taught everyone how to use butane and extract oil from it. But
the BHO method.
Yep.
That many people talk about. Some people know.
I happen to like BHO oil, but I think I've come to like alcohol better now.
Well, Dr.
Well-made
Bob,
alcohol is just loaded.
I'd like to change your mind on that, because the patent that I wrote, the latest incarnation of the patent I wrote, uses extreme temperature control to very carefully select and pick exactly what you want from the extraction. And I've bested several of my colleagues who came to me with the alcohol story too, and they now are back doing it the way I suggested. It's a matter of having a machine that has the control available to you to selectively extract what you want out of it. My machine can control it from minus 170 to plus 240, and anywhere in that range.
To give you a little backstory, Dr. Bob, on INDRA, who I met maybe close to 20 years or 17 or 16 years ago online, because he contacted me, and I remember him the first time telling me, he said, hey, I have this system that could put you out of business. I don't want to put you out of business, but I just wanted you to know that I have this system. And we sort of befriended one another, and we went back and forth, and we maintained a bit of a connection over the years. And at one point in around 2008, keep in mind, because I do the bubble bags since 1999, I've been doing water extraction, and I coined the phrase bubble hash, and I've been promoting this water extraction thing. A lot of people come to me through email and say, hey, I've got the next best, greatest thing. You're not going to believe this thing. It's going to blow your mind. But with INDRA, it was different. There was some, like, the hair on my arms would stand up when I read his emails, and I was like, no, there's something about this guy. Like, it's something about this guy. So what I decided one day was, because he's in America and I'm in Canada, and of course I can't go to America because I have cannabis felony charges. I'm very dangerous with the cannabis plant. I couldn't go there to sort of see. And so what we found out to do was I said, well, can you defat hemp seed? Like if your process can extract oils, you can probably do a pretty cool defatting on hemp seed. And he was like, oh, I could do that, no problem. So what I did was I purchased some hemp seed from my friend's company that were at the supermarket in Kansas where his facility was. And I sent him, when he was still living there, I sent him a couple of bags of dehulled Manitoba Harvest hemp seed. Now, he extracted it and he sent it to me in Vancouver where I was living, and he told me, go show it to some labs. And he was very confident. He said, I bet you they tell you they've never seen numbers this high. And I was like, once again, I was like, okay, like you have to understand when someone says something that sounds like bragging, if it's true, it's not bragging, it's stating a fact.
Yep.
But when you don't know it's true, it sounds like bragging. So he sends me this oil, he sends me this defatted hemp seed protein, and it's basically, first of all, the oil is gold. And the only time I ever saw gold oil in my life was when they took cold pressing, which is a misnomer at best because they heat it up to well over 100 degrees, and the oil turns green from chloroform releasing in the cake. And you end up with chlorophyll, chloroform. And you end up with the chlorophyll colored hemp seed oil, which most, if not all companies have, because doing a carbon filter isn't really worthwhile just for the color.
Well, especially because people buy chlorophyll anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, this oil was gold to perfection. It blew me away. I tasted it. It tasted so good. Then the thing that blew me away more was the dehulled hemp seed was all intact, completely non-destroyed at all. It was little embryos that instead of being gold were white. Yep. And when I had it tested at a lab, 3 labs, I spent a lot of money having that shit tested. They all came back with the same thing, and they all were testing in the hemp industry in Canada. So they were people that were used to testing hemp. None of them had ever seen protein powder isolate test that high. It was 62%. The highest close to that, which was the company that basically my friend's company that just sold for 130 million bucks, was 50%. They were bragging about 50%. Without even trying, INDRA came in at 62%. And the oil was the same thing. It tested higher in all of the essential amino acids. It was able to preserve longer because of the way it was extracted. Same with the protein powder isolate. It lasted longer without going bad. It was just all kind of mind-blowing what he did. So when he did that for me, that is when I put more of my belief in INDRA, even though kind of emotionally I was already invested in him. I knew that he was real. My analytical scientific mind needed a bit of proof, and well, that was provided in spades.
Well, I've been tested. Well, you have to understand that before we started extracting the seeds or before we started extracting any pot, we were in the essential oil extraction business for 17 years. We had been embraced by the biggest companies around the world. Robertet and Grasse France leased the system and the method from us. And we had a lot of experience with extracting oils, and we came up with a lot of new information by tweaking the system. For instance, we extract curcumin and let's see, the curcumins come from, what is that?
Turmeric.
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 So they sent us turmeric to extract because turmeric, you can extract it 2 ways. One, the alcohol way, and you get the curcumins. The other way is a different solvent, and you get all the oil from the turmeric. And when they gave it to us to extract, we got a complete extraction of the curcumins and the oil. And interestingly enough, because of the temperature it was extracted at, they remained separate from one another. The curcumins were like milk. It was milky white, and the oil was golden orange. And they were both there. And when I put them in a separatory funnel, and that was all it took to get full measure of both of them. You just drained out the curcumins on the bottom, and then the turmeric oil was on the top. And that started happening with everything we were doing. So I really came to the conclusion that the oil, or the pot oil, could be extracted much in the same manner. And you could extract the lighter frequencies off the top and the middle, and then the bottom stuff. And this became of great interest to a lot of companies around the world who'd been extracting using heat to get rid of the solvents, as you might imagine. The company in Germany that extracts and offers chamomile oil, which has always been blue. The real German chamomile oil is blue if you try to go get it in bottles. But when I extracted it, once again, I got a light yellow fraction on top and a very, very heavy off-white extraction on the bottom. And we were looking at it, and I took a little of each out and put it in a test tube and applied some heat to it, and within 5 minutes it was all blue. So
now, John, was that at different temperatures that you were extracting, or did?
Yes, my system is able to extract from minus 170 to plus 220 and anywhere in between. And so having that kind of control allows you to make those kind of extractions. And when they're made in the cold, in the minus area, always those extractions remain separated. However many fractions are present, they stay separated. I have extracted some things that had 3 and 4 fractions of oils in them.
And have you guys tested the different fractions? Because what I've seen come out when we're doing hydrocarbon extractions, at various temperatures, the lower the temperature oftentimes pulls the smaller molecules first, which would classify the monoterpenes and a lot of the acid phase bicyclic phytocannabinoids. So when we're doing extractions at colder temperatures, we were seeing a lot more THCA as opposed to some of the extraction systems out there that actually run heated gas. Both pull a little bit more wax, but also pull higher ratios of the acid and neutral and basic form.
Well, if you can run your temperature down low enough, I have extracted at a very low temperature, put it in the bottle, and an hour later, it was falling out of solution THCA in high purity. It just created a pile of crystals in the bottom of the jar. So I'm sure that as in the past, people have used heat to make separations. It's the more redundant of the processes, and I've chosen to use cold to make separations and different kinds of separations. And it's been my experience over the years that cold is much handier because you don't need 25 degrees between temperatures in order to get separation like you do with heat.
Interesting.
I think people are finding similar things with ethanol.
Well, I've taken ethanol and made it cold with liquid nitrogen and made extractions. Mm-hmm. When you get the ethanol that cold, it does some pretty amazing things as well, I got to say. And I even, after I posted BHO, I even posted the ethanol made cold extraction, but people just laughed and they're like, oh, you just want to take BHO away from us. And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to stop people from blowing themselves up and burning themselves to death.
It's a lot easier, isn't it?
Yeah, I tried everything. I told people you had to stainless steel, you have to do it in the booth. You can't just do it outside and depend on the wind blowing it away because it's a heavy gas and it'll fall right down at your feet and rest there and burn you from the feet up. And if you think that you've had some shit in life, get your feet and lower legs burned.
Seriously. I had a friend blow up outside, and he was very much like, he wasn't like against making BHO. He was against people who didn't know how to making it. And he himself was one of those people who was convinced he knew what he was doing right up until he burnt himself very badly.
Unfortunately, people have a propensity to fool themselves and lie to themselves about what might and might not be safe. And what Dr. Bob was saying about the ignoramuses at the top who choose the rules and how we do things. Studies have bothered me all my life because they've been, long ago when I was in high school, someone told me, hey, if you measure the speed of light, it affects it by measuring it. And that buried deep in me and stuck with me. And I thought, these people that are doing these studies are affecting the study by the way they're going about it. And so therefore the information is dog shit.
Well, along those lines, one of my pet peeves are these assholes who talk about cannabis addiction. And what they do is they take a population of cannabis users and then they stop using it, or they give them rimonabant, which totally shuts down the receptor, okay? But they didn't screen the people beforehand to see whether they were depressed, whether they had sleeping problems, whether they had joint pains, or any of these other things that cannabis is good for. So now you take all of these people, and everybody's using cannabis is going to benefit for the most part, except for a couple of psychos, but most people are going to benefit, And you take it away, and now they're not going to sleep as well, or they're going to have more aches and pains. And these morons call that withdrawal. We took away the food that was making them better, and now they're suffering a nutritional deficiency, and you're calling them addicted.
Well, you know, another sad thing is they take that same information and use it. The government does. Not long ago, I read that in Colorado, they decided that a lot of the car accidents had something to do with pot. So I got in touch with the DMV and I got a hold of some statistics. And it turns out that every single person that they mentioned who had an accident while they were smoking pot also had a blood alcohol level that would put me on the floor if I drank that much. And they don't mention that part. They just mention, and then the other ones, the ones who get caught doing drugs and say they're doing cocaine, and then they get them in court and they say, yeah, I started out using marijuana. I want to slap those people right down to the floor. How many of those fuckers use that excuse to screw everybody else is just beyond.
Tell me about it. I've been an expert witness in so many trials with these people screwing sick people. You know, it's just outrageous.
And then the other thing is that you said about the study, they don't check those people out. Now the people who are smoking pot and having schizophrenic experiences, hello, they're already fucking nuts before anybody gave them a joint. These people.
Well, they were already on meds. They were already on meds.
Exactly. These people have schizophrenic experiences after eating Jell-O.
Well, and the meds that they give people promote suicide anyway. You know, the government's policy is to kill the veterans because first they make the stupid wars, then they send these people there. They come back with head injuries, for example, and because of pain and other things, what do? They give them narcotics. So now they make them irritated, they make them addicted, they make them constipated. So now they have enhanced problems with their family life. So now they give them depressants that happen to have the side effect of suicide. So every 90 minutes in the United States, a veteran kills himself. Government policy, it's unacceptable.
No, it's more than 22. It's closer to 50, and it's just obnoxious. As we're talking in the side, is that, you know, how do we get these people help when the helpers at the VA aren't even doing what they're supposed to be doing to even help the vets who are suicidal, where we have them actually committing suicide out in the parking lots of VA facilities?
Well, you know, the thing about them, they wander the halls, the nurses do, with a clipboard and a pocket full of the antidepressants. And when you come in and they know you're a Vietnam vet, they come over to me all the time and they go, hi, John. I'd like to talk to you about this new medication that a lot of vets are doing really well with. And I always look at them and go, no, I don't want any happy pills, thanks. I'm going to pass. And they go, well, why not? And I said, well, you know what? Somewhere down the road, that stuff is either going to be found out to be causing cancer, brain cancer, or something like that, or they'll quit making it. In either case, the vets won't be able to get it anymore. And if any of them have got machine guns at home, they may show up down here to register a complaint. So therefore, I'm going to avoid the happy pills. I've survived all this time. I think Agent Orange was a preservative, and I got plenty of it in me, and I'm still alive and well. Well, I'm not exactly well, but as I continue to take pot oil, I get better and better and better. And I can't even tell. They asked me how I got rid of the skin cancer, and I just said, Kickapoo Joy Juice. I sent off for it from Kentucky, and I poured it on there every day, and now it's gone. And they said, well, what was in it? And I said, hey, I don't know. It just said on the bottle, Kickapoo Joy Juice.
That good old Kickapoo Joy Juice, supported by veterans, for veterans.
Exactly. I give it away free. I give it free to vets. I mean, when vets come to me and they've got some problem, I just, how much do you need? And
you know what frightened me, Indra, when you told the story of being at the VA and her coming over with the pills and the sound of her voice, that robotic sort of calming, like drugged out. That was terrifyingly accurate. And I've never even been to the VA and offered pills, but
listen, every time it doesn't matter which nurse it is, and I begin suspecting automatons, and because they all have that same thing. They come on to you like, hi, and I'm like, yeah, what are you taking? That's what I want.
Oh my goodness.
One point I wanted to bring up when you guys are talking about alcohol and butane is, considering that they're completely opposite polarities, they have different responses and attributes that can be extracted from that plant, and just something to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tony, I tell you, the pure alcohol, 195 proof or better, dropped down to 150 degrees below zero, will make some interesting extracts. And
it gets pretty
loads
viscous,
of volatiles.
Don't it, John? Don't it get pretty viscous down at that temperature?
Still works. What you do is you put the alcohol in the freezer and you ramp it up until you've got it pretty cold, right? Then you pour it in, and then you put the whole thing in a container with liquid nitrogen in it, and cover the top with a bowl so that the overhead can get to it too, and that way you can achieve that temperature. And then you drain it off, and as you drain it off in the room that you're in a room temperature room, it'll start becoming less and less viscous, and there your extract will be. You have to be nimble-fingered to get it exactly at the right moment, and you have to sit there and watch it like a fucking hawk. But like I said, it produces some interesting results.
John, how much time do you do that? We used to use really anhydrate alcohol, and we got really super good results, but we would do it in a ultrasonic bath with, and the exposure time was often less than 1 minute. And that's what gave us such high quality oil. The yields were good, but not great. But the quality was incredible.
I was going to mention that. I kept my mouth shut, but you let it out of the bag. The container that we put it in was an ultrasonic bath, and ultrasonic bath makes a huge difference.
What was the time difference?
The time difference?
No, the time that you had it in the bath of alcohol in the ultrasonic.
Oh, I think we chose something. We chose a master number, which was 11, I think, the first time we tried it. So we had it in there for 11. And by the way, it was a industrial ultrasonic bath. It wasn't one of these ultrasonic jewelry cleaning things.
Yeah, ours was a jewelry cleaning thing. We were just fucking around. We weren't mass producing. But we found less than 1 minute, we could get about 90% of the cannabinoids and terpenes, and zero green.
Yeah, I didn't see any green in the 11-minute long one either, but we kept reducing the time on it each time. Yeah. But there's no green to be had in it when you get to the right temperatures.
Yeah, when we did it also, when we did it for like 10 minutes or something like that, we got almost complete extraction, like you're talking about.
Yeah, it's not a bad way. The only thing is, to me, for my taste, it leaves, no matter how well you remove it all, it leaves a different flavor to it. And I propose extracting at very low butane temperatures. The only flavor it leaves is the one that everyone desires.
Well, we got 823 people watching live. A lot of people in chat over at YouTube enjoying the conversation. Good caliber of conversation and dialogue happening here on Hash Church 106 today, which is pretty good. 106 episodes. Not sure how we've managed to do this 106 Sundays in a row, but here we are, lo and behold, ready to blow smoke to the Vatican for our good friend Rob Clark, who's unable to while he's visiting Turkey.
Hey, what's up with that skate deck over your shoulder there?
Oh, this is from Ripper Seeds. The Ripper Haze.
Cute.
Isn't that your son's?
Well, yeah, it is actually. It actually is.
Yeah, Mark started when his son was 1 year old, buying him model airplanes and other expensive electronic toys that Mark has had a great deal of fun playing with.
I'll tell you this. When I first had my first son, I definitely wasn't prepared how long I had to wait to like play Hot Wheels and like have fun with him playing. It was like, man, like for the longest time, he just sat there and did almost nothing. Read books and stuff and have great experiences, but not the ones you think like, yeah, I can't wait to ride a dirt bike with him. It's like, okay, well, you probably better wait because that's going to be a few years.
The video of little man smelling the terpenes was absolutely the funniest thing I've ever seen and super classic.
Yeah, that's a pretty awesome video.
By the way, Tony, those terpenes came.
Yes.
The red Congolese. And I didn't really know how to use it because you guys are way ahead of me on that. I just extract the whole ball of wax at once. And it's always made for the most pleasant sensation. People smoking it, you know. People can put it in a pen, open it up and sniff it and go, hey, that's this and that's that. They can identify it because of the way we do it. But anyway, those red Congolese terpenes came, and I put a little bit of it on a dab of Trainwreck oil that I collected a few years ago, which is just very, very nice oil. From a friend who's had that plant for 30 years, and he's never crossbred it or anything, so it's an incredible, rare thing. It produces the most beautiful oil ever. And anyway, I stuck that in my thing and smoked it, and man, oh man, it hammered me, but the flavor was like somebody pulled my tongue out. It was like a Roadrunner thing. Pulled the coyote's tongue out, painted it with a paintbrush, and let it go back in his mouth. That's what it was like.
Mm.
Yeah, the flavor's real.
The terp dip. So what I do with it is, you could see this all starts off clear, and it gets a little yellow as I dip it. And that's where, like, that early on in our shows where we heard terp dip. I was hanging out with a patient last night. We were smoking, and he had some rosin that was like, I had some super lemon cream terp rosin, and he had some super lemon haze or something. But we were dipping. We just take a little bit of that, and you tilt the vial on the side, you know, and you just dip it barely in. Here, I'll show you. You barely dip it in, and you could get like 75, at least 50 to 75 of these terp dips. I mean, you contaminate the terpenes for sure. I mean, that's where Bubbleman, went the other direction. But I mean, as far as like that, you just kind of do it on the. Hold on, do it right. Let's see if I can do this.
Oh, you went deep.
A little bit.
Yeah, right here on the side. Where the liquid.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. If you want to supercharge anything, and for me, if you know what you're dipping into it, yeah, sure, not everything mixes well together, but that Jack terp mixes with about anything. So I just terp dip it all the time.
And that's exactly how I use it also, Tony. Exactly how you just demonstrated. And mine also slowly becomes more golden colored, exactly like yours.
But quickly becomes gone.
But it is yours because it was red Congolese also.
It was. Did you notice the term, the past tense? It was.
It was.
Red Congolese.
Yeah.
That's going to be an expensive habit, Tony, so I've got to get that worked out, how to do that. Because I cannot afford that. I used the little dropper and I actually dropped the drop of the, not a drop, that teeny little dropper, maybe an 1/8 or 1/16 of a drop onto the oil. And I'm glad I didn't drop a whole drop on it.
Yeah, you should do like 2 drops per gram of your oil and mix it in really well and let it sit overnight, and then try it and see what happens.
The only thing you have to be careful about with terpenes is don't leave the terpene bottle open, otherwise you'll have an indoor explosion.
Yeah.
I had an explosion in my head when I.
Yeah, there's the terp oil.
So the last time we were talking, this is what Scialdone was. We were talking about. This is the terp oil where, it's unfortunately really expensive, but it's all from flowers and no solvents, and was testing 86%, like over 40% terpenes. But there's 10 drops to a 0.4 gram of rosin. But man, it's incredible to mix that with it. I think Todd
He just held his up.
Yeah, I did leave you one, right, Todd?
You sure did.
Todd always has everything we're talking about.
Close. Only when you visit 2 days before and hang out all night.
No, but
yeah,
even
really
if it's
nice.
a book or if it's a, whatever it is, you have it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, he's got
It doesn't hurt when you visit and leave it with me. It definitely doesn't hurt. So please do that again, Tony.
Todd, where's that box of stuff you have off to the side that you pull anything out that comes up in the conversation from?
Well, I do have a big office, so you would appreciate it, of all people.
He borrowed that shit from Carrot Top.
No, he's got the 4-dimensional Santa sack.
Oh, that is great. This stuff's been awesome, though, Tony. It's such a treasure because it does go so quickly. Past tense is exactly how you're describing it, quite quickly.
Yep.
I love it. Yeah.
It does become an expensive.
I was just about to do a drop.
So how was
Tony?
Go
Tony,
ahead.
I was in Amsterdam for a while with Sam and Rob, and we definitely depleted the stock that he had over there. So it was nice. The red Congo on red Congo is something else.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
But yeah, I was definitely impressed how it actually took, stuff that was a little more sesquiterpene rich and lack of monoterpenes and just kicked it right up again, brought back the flavor.
Yeah, maybe I'm not so crazy.
You might be. You might be, though.
I might be crazy.
That's
but
okay.
It's good.
Well, the world has advanced to where it's at because of crazies. So don't feel bad about it.
Well, except the crazy. Be the crazy.
Crazy is also creative crazy. Crazy, first they tell you, they laugh at you, and then they start looking at it and they go, what do you got here exactly? Then later on, they're like, hey, can I be the distributor?
Oh my God, that was good.
The interesting thing is I always like sitting down with someone and we start off by, this would be a very good experiment. You start off and you smoke some flowers and you're like, okay, the flowers are like 1 to 3% terpenes. And then you smoke some concentrate, whatever that would be. And that's like 7, 10%. And then you jack it up to like 20% terpenes and then 40% terpenes, which is what is in that vial. And as you do that experiment, you could really, really see the catalytic effects, I guess you would call it, of how terpenes work. Catalytic.
Tony,
thank you, Mark.
Tony, by any chance, do you know the terpene content of dry sift?
Usually dry sift is like around, that could be 10 to 15, no?
I would have said over 10.
Yeah.
I would have thought very high, but I've never really measured it.
Over 10 is pretty high for an extract, though.
You never actually tested that there, Sam?
No. I was doing terpene work with cannabis, but not with the resin. No, I wasn't. I did test some. I've got some. I did some terpene testing a really long time ago about herbal cannabis and the same resin from that herbal cannabis. But we didn't measure the relative amounts except for we measured the relative amounts of each fraction.
So I have
Go ahead, Tony.
I was going to say I had a question because I came up to a stump like in SC Labs and Steep Hill, both of them. So what happens is when I do this prana infusion, because I don't do an extraction, and it's basically like taking a plant down, negative 45, negative 300, but basically taking that whole plant and infusing it into the fatty acids. The problem that they have, they can't tell me what the terpene profile is. So I was wondering if is that something maybe Mark could do with the proton NMR or something?
Okay, so it's not fatty acids, right? So if they're fats, they're probably esters. They're probably the triglyceride esters, I would imagine. And so, yeah, once you put stuff in a fat like that, you have to do something called a fatty acid methyl ester. The acronym is FAME. FAME, a FAME study. So what you do is you take that material and you esterify with a little bit of acid and methanol, and now you end up making the methyl esters of all the fatty acids. Now you can get a fatty acid profile. It'll all fly into GC. So the triglyceride is not volatile, and you can't see it in the GC. You can see it in HPLC, but in order to see it by GC, you'd have to make the methyl esters.
Well,
So
the question is that going to be on the same column? Because I think Tony's saying he wants to do the terpenes, right?
Yeah, I want to see
Well-
what the terpene content is in my capsules and things because they're
Yeah, I mean, once it's in a fatty acid, once it's in a fat or an oil layer, it's forever. It's lost. I mean, you need to do the analysis before that. To get it back out to quantify it is going to be difficult. But I had a question. So you said that vial that you showed was only 60% or 40% terpenes. Is that right?
this one right here. Yeah, this one right here. We were looking at the test last time. It was like 86 total,
Right.
and it's like 400 milligrams of terpenes, so like over 40, but something like that.
Ounces cannabinoids.
Yeah, he's mixing it with rosin or something.
Yeah, that's a flower rosin using a sonicator with terpene.
Right. That's a dog walker?
That's the dog walker.
Welcome back, Sub.
Hey.
Doing good, man. Your internet foggy on you or what?
Yeah, I'm on my phone today, but it's all good. I was just earlier just listening to Dr. Bob. I was actually learning a lot. It's really nice.
I've really been enjoying the conversation today for sure. I always like when people share. It was nice to see some of those photos of Morocco from Chimera. Hoping he's going to put more of those up later and talk a little bit about that. And just been great conversation today, guys. Very good.
I wanted to actually chime in a little bit on something we were talking about earlier, which is the stress issue. So I don't know how many people know this, Mark. I know you know this, but about 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with a very rare disease. And it's called alpha-1. It's genetic COPD. Now, prior to that time, I was a heavy cannabis user of all types, medibles, smoking, foods, and it seemed to make me a happy, smart human being. After the diagnosis, I obviously don't smoke very much anymore. When you see me smoke on the shows, it's somewhat for effect, even though I still enjoy the flavor. So I'm still at this point, still trying to figure out medibles. My stress level is incredibly high. Knowing I'm going to die from choking to death, that adds stress to you. And running the cannabis business, as all of us do, it just adds stress when you are somewhat on the outside of it. You know, all my friends do bong hits around me and stuff, and I kind of have to run out of the room. So I just really wanted to chime in. Definitely for me, using large amounts of cannabis control my stress all my life, and not being able to smoke as much as I want has definitely made things more confusing. And I'd like to hear other people's comments on this.
Have you been eating more of it since you've been not smoking as much?
Yeah, I take about 500 milligrams a night in a medible. I make a little peppermint patty. I've taken upwards of 1,000 milligrams a night, but I'm wondering if after 45 years of smoking, my tolerance may be even more than that, because the effectiveness of it is wearing off, is what I'm telling you.
Do you keep the peppermint patty in your mouth, or do you chew and eat the peppermint patty so it goes down into your gut?
I chew it and eat it. One of the problems we have here, and of course I can make my own, but it's just simpler. We have a local lady, it's a really sweet lady, her name's Karen, and she makes medibles, but you know, she makes them with 30 pounds of trim. So you don't know what you're going to get when you get it. So lately I've been doing my own oil itself, but I'm still figuring out the amount to consume.
Have you tried putting it under your tongue?
Yeah, keep it in your mouth.
I would put it under your tongue and let it sublingually absorb into your body very rapidly. You know, the tongue, the palms of the hands, and the feet have this ability called, I forget what it's called now. But if you rub garlic on the bottom of your feet, the next breath you let out of your mouth is going to smell like garlic. Subliminal absorption. Yeah, subliminal absorption is what it's called, and it's able to be done. The palms of the hands, the feet, the soles of the feet, and the tongue all have this in common, and probably I'm guessing somewhere around the rectum as well, because the tongue and the rectum are connected, and so I would say that I would try putting it, warm it up a little bit, put it under your tongue, maybe maybe mix it with a little ethanol.
Okay.
Put it under your tongue and see if it.
No ethanol. No ethanol. Oh my God.
Just enough to make it so that it's
olive oil.
It's horrible.
Okay, sorry, no ethanol. Use Coca-Cola then. Or
olive oil.
Whatever your fucking ethic tells you. And Dr. Bob, you're there in the background. I wanted to say to you earlier, if you would like to have any of the extracts that could be made that you might use, that you could play with a little bit, let me know and I'll provide them for you free of charge.
Well, one thing about putting extracts under the tongue is they can't be terpene rich, or it'll be like fucking fire. I mean, like
that. Yeah, eat a lot of hash, pokes a hole in you.
It's peppery. There's no doubt about it. It's peppery, but I put it under my tongue all the time. And the reason I do is simply it comes on as quite a rush.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's got to be intense stress, you know, thinking about that the concept of choking, and it's...
What's going on with the choking? I don't...
Basically with genetic COPD, I have a reduced lung function right now. My O2 sat is around 93. And it continues to fall. To explain it to everyone, my body is missing an enzyme that protects my liver and lungs from my white blood cells. So once a week, a nurse comes and he shoves a needle in me and he gives me an enzyme from a healthy person, and it's $12,000 a month for the rest of my life.
Have you taken NAC, N-acetylcysteine?
I have not.
I've been blown away by how that has affected my lungs. You know, my whole life I've had this, I'm a chronic cougher. I've always coughed my whole life, with or without pot. I almost never smoke. I eat it all the time, you know. But I would always have this discomfort where I wasn't feeling like I was getting a satisfied breath because I wasn't able to exhale from like a little teeny area in my lung. And if I, for example, yawned or sneezed, things like that would open it up. And so what I found out, at the time, a friend, before I knew he was an asshole, told me to take this N-acetylcysteine. And I did. And from that day on, I never don't take it. And I never have that issue anymore.
Well, let me...
COPD, and it's helped them as well, and it's actually known medically. It's demonstrated.
Let me add something to this for you, for everybody who's suffering with the breath thing. I spent 30 years practicing as a DO, and I learned soft tissue manipulation. One of the things that I discovered during that time was you can only breathe in as well as you can breathe out. And if you can't breathe out, you're not going to get a good breath back in. So there's certain adjustments you can make on the rib cage and in the diaphragm if you know what you're doing, soft tissue, to open it up. And even with your COPD subcool, if you were somewhere near me and got to me, I would increase your breath 100% in 10 minutes. And it makes a huge difference. If you understand how to manipulate the soft tissue of the body, and believe me, I spent 30 years doing it. So I know a few things about it. And you've got to be able to breathe all the way out before you can get a good breath in. That's just...
and that's one of my biggest problems is they teach us to do what's called pursed lip breathing. You know what that means. But one of the things I noticed one day on my video show, The Weed Nerd, is when I would take a hit, and I would exhale and I would talk, and I would notice the smoke kept coming out. So if I take a hit, it takes over 20 exhales before smoke stops coming out. And so what you said is very true. If you can't get rid of the carbon dioxide, you certainly can't breathe in any oxygen.
That's exactly correct. You've got it. And pretty soon, that's where the deficiency comes from. So if your rib cage and your diaphragm are adjusted properly, you'll get a full breath out. And once you start getting a full breath out, you'll be a happier camper, trust me.
Do you think I should maybe see, I obviously have nurses and doctors, everything. Is there some kind of respiratory specialist that's helping me with the soft tissue manipulation?
Where are you at?
I'm in California, Northern California.
Well, so am I. So am I, so you should see me.
Okay, Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, you guys got a link anyway. I'll help set that up.
Really appreciate it.
No, listen, I hear you talk and I tell you're out of breath because when you speak at the end of your breath, at the end of what you're saying, you can hear your body go immediately right away. And so you're running what you're saying right down to the last of it. And having dealt with people with this problem for 30 years, I know all the symptoms and all the signs and you can just see it. You can see it in people's faces. I got to the point where people would come into my practice and walk in the office, and I knew what was wrong with them.
Another funny thing about, and this is just a side note, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. One of the things that drives me crazy is apparently at 55 I look fairly young. So people all day long tell me how good I look while I'm choking to death standing in front of them. It's frustrating as shit.
Well, cannabis definitely keeps you looking young. There's no question about that because aging is caused by free radicals. And when you're using the body's most supreme mechanism to inhibit free radical problems, what do you expect? You age slower.
It makes good sense.
That's why I've maintained over the years that Agent Orange is a preservative because I'm 70. My hair hasn't lost any color, and people all the time at the cash register or wherever I'm at, there'll be a line of people, and someone will say to me something about it, and I'll say, "Well, I'll show them my senior citizen card to get the fucking discount, right?"
I do the same thing.
And then they go, "Wow, you don't look 70." And can I have your phone number?
Oh my gosh. Did they ever tell you that you look like a young George Harrison?
No, I've been accused of looking like what's his name who wrote the play that they did the radio thing and everybody thought it was real back in the 20s or 30s rather.
Orson Welles.
Orson Welles.
The one. It was not the Edward G. Robinson. It was the story where the Martians.
This could be a story.
War of the World, yeah.
War of the Worlds, damn. Who said that?
And who was the guy who did that?
Orson Welles.
Orson Welles was War of the Worlds.
People tell me all the time that I look like a young Orson Welles, and I've heard it maybe 10,000 times. I've even had a couple people ask me for an autograph, and I write on there, "Batman, thanks."
That's bizarre. Orson Welles. I think he did F is for Fake as well. It's kind of an interesting flick if you haven't seen it.
I've seen all his flicks, yeah. He was an interesting guy, a very potent guy, very powerful. When he'd talk on the set, on the stage, everybody shut up and listened to what he had to say. He was an amazing person. Anyway, Dr. Bob, did you hear me offer earlier to supply you with any things that you might need?
I answered you, but I had it on mute, so I didn't want to interrupt and re-answer you.
Oh, okay.
So I'm always happy to play with things. I have little bottles that I bought of Mirstream, and I got linalool on order, and beta-caryophyllene and all that shit. So I play with stuff because there's a lot of important things that can be done. If you want to hear some more nonsense, I'll talk more.
Yeah, please do.
Please do.
Well, these cannabinoid receptors are quite magical because they also form association with other receptors. And not only are there hybrid receptors now, but the body also makes hybrid ligands. And, for example, we can buy nutraceuticals that manipulate many of our natural neurotransmitters. Are you guys familiar with, for example, citicoline?
No.
Yes.
When you take too much pot or whatever that is for the individual, because it might be 1 drag for somebody, it might be 1 gram for somebody else, but cannabis is known to inhibit acetylcholine. And if you take citicoline, it eliminates the bulk of that paranoia and negativity, totally. And what it does is it increases acetylcholine levels. You can't take acetylcholine directly. It doesn't work. But there are 3 pathways that acetylcholine is produced in our body. One of them uses this acetylcholine, CITI choline, and another uses 6-phosphoglyceraldehyde. And both of those eliminate the high. But there are other important nutraceuticals that we can take that will modulate things like serotonin levels, dopamine levels, all of these critical factors, you know? And I think by taking them in combination with cannabis, we'll be able to deal with a whole variety of different psychological profiles. And I have a friend of mine, a doctor, who is involved because of his own psychological depression issues. We're now integrating, on the one hand, the philosophy of my science, which is just really science of life, and we're going to explore with these different compounds on top of cannabis what might have a beneficial effect for him. So I think there's a lot of things that can be done with nutraceuticals. There are so many that you can do that turn on fat burning, which is so healthy, which is why the ketogenic diets are good and all of that. But you can mimic certain things by taking these additional nutraceuticals. Things like resveratrol, for example, turns on fat burning. Polyunsaturated fatty acids turn on fat burning. Vitamin D, and a whole slew. If you actually look, all of the beneficial herbs around the world throughout time, and you look at the active ingredients in them, every single one of them is, for the most part, turning on fat burning. The exceptions are the ones that are direct antioxidants, or a few that actually turn off sugar burning, so they indirectly turn on fat burning. But there's a universal truth here. We need to turn on that recycling system so we don't wear out quicker.
I was just going to say, because it all sounds very interesting, just to make sure when you're holding your phone that your finger isn't on your mic. Some people want to hear you louder. I can hear you perfect.
On the side, I should be all right, but I'm eating as well, so maybe I'm...
Oh, no problem. I can hear you perfect personally, but I just wanted to, the odd time I have heard you get louder and a bit quieter. But yeah, that's all very, very interesting. It's nice to get a deeper understanding on some of these things.
What about nicotinamide riboside?
Very important.
Because I've been eating that lately, and it's really been like a little kick in the ass, you know. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, it's been energizing.
No, that's a good one because it actually helps promote fat burning, because the way fat burning, one of the critical regulators of fat burning is an enzyme called sirtuins. So sirtuin, there's a whole family of them. I think there's up to maybe 15 of them. And that's what resveratrol turns on, which is what resveratrol was discovered because of why there's why don't they have metabolic syndrome, for example, in France when they're eating all these fatty foods? So the suspicion was that it was all the red wine. And red wine has a compound called resveratrol. And resveratrol actually activates an enzyme within us called sirtuin. And what sirtuin does is it changes the architecture of the DNA, repressing certain things and allowing for the expression of others. And in particular, resveratrol turns on fat burning. And its cofactor is nicotinic acid.
NADH. It's actually the hydride form. NADH is what it gets,
Because what they sell, if you buy multivitamins, they sell you nicotinamide because the nicotinic acid causes flushing. But the nicotinic acid and the riboside, there's a whole slew of interrelated biochemical pathways there. In particular with the NAMDT transferase activity that recharges that. Everything comes down to flow. And we don't teach people in that perspective. We teach people statics. And statics in physics says life can't exist. It's too improbable. Whereas the work of Prigogine says life must exist. So
entropically, it can't, right?
Pardon me?
I said entropically, it can't.
Yes, as long as you view it correctly. That's what Prigogine got his Nobel Prize for that, because he went from equilibrium physics to far from equilibrium physics, where organization is a natural process as long as energy flows. I mean, we're all familiar with some simple examples of that. You know, the drain, when you drain your bathtub and you get the whirlpool, right? That's gravity acting and creating the whirlpool, because the water dissipates its potential quicker by forming the whirlpool. And it's the same thing with life. That's why life emerged, because it was a better way to make the universe stupider. And that's why evolution keeps driving us forward. You know, and it turns out that the magic is just so fucking unbelievable. But the endocannabinoid system provided the key. From my way of thinking and what I understand, and again, I can back it up, we would not have evolved the human brain without the endocannabinoid system. Would not have been possible.
That's no light statement right there.
You know, I work with the Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church. I got all these projects going on all around the world, because all I do is try to spread trouble. And, you know, these guys are characters, but they are totally devoted to helping people. That's what their life is. They're true Christians in that sense. But for them, the cannabis is the sacrament. And they've gone to court here in the U.S. and throughout the world. They actually have a document signed by the Queen of England authorizing them recognizing them as a church. So when Jamaica legalized, my friends all got special dispensations over there because of the good works they've done over the years and what they can do. We're involved in like a $350 million project to totally reorient the economy of Jamaica, powered by my friends from the Coptic Church. It's amazing.
That is incredible. Well, maybe we'll bump into you there. We have a little project ourselves going on over there. It's an amazing time to be involved in anything in Jamaica right now, because they're really seemingly looking to embrace being able to finally use this plant. You know, it's all, I mean, it is, although it is somewhat, you know, socially accepted in Jamaica, like in most corners, there are still people who look down and frown upon it, much like any prohibition enforced place. But you see that dissipating, and even the people who seem to be against it now, with all the way the media has been for the last couple of years since they announced it, and in my opinion, Jamaica's moved quite fast compared to other nations from the day they decided we need to do something to how fast they've been doing it has been pretty impressive.
Well,
That's
things
nice,
got
Mark.
screwed up.
I just was going to say, Mark, I've never seen anybody drive into a brick wall that gracefully.
Nice.
And real quick on that, shout out to all our friends and brethren out there on the island. There's a real bad hurricane.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's true. Batten down the hatches for sure. Hope that it passes without destroying too many crops and homes and affecting the people. That's very true, Tony. We got to definitely puff a bowl for Jamaica and the hurricane that is fastly approaching.
Oh, it's a rough life, isn't it?
Yes.
Remember when we were on the island a couple years ago, the first thing I said, because I've lived through about 5 hurricanes and a few tornadoes and a few floods, you know, between New Orleans and Florida and Kansas. So I've always, in the back of my mind, don't think about if, I always think about when Mother Nature comes out and decides to strike, because it will happen. And my first thing was like, when people were like, oh, we're going to put up, you know, all these greenhouses and stuff. And I was like, well, what about an hurricane? Not on this side, man. I'm like, well, hurricanes happen in the Caribbean. They happen all the time. They could come from different sides and different angles. And they're scary shit. Scary things happen during storms.
Tony, it's part of farmers' life. There is no such thing as a guaranteed agricultural crop. In Jamaica, it's even more iffy.
It was just interesting that Mark was promoting pot there, and Dr. Bob is at the Coptic Christian Church. It was a nice crossroading there.
Yeah, I met with the Prime Minister, and we've been all over the place there. If you look up Masada, M-A-S-A-D-A, in Melamede, you'll see what's going on there with them. It's pretty impressive, because they have an economic free trade zone that they're developing. That's going to be the centerpiece of the Jamaican Jamaica 2030 industrial development, blah, 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 you know. But something I'd like to mention, since I have your ear, you know, this physics that I talk about basically tells us that everything is connected to everything else. And what we're seeing happening now with the cannabis awakening that's spreading around the world is really a new global consciousness. We have to look at things not as, humanity is not a collection of human beings. What it is a biochemistry. It's the collective chemistry of humanity in the big chemistry set called the planet. And if you guys are familiar at all with the Gaia hypothesis from back in the 60s there, that's really what's happening now. The Earth is undergoing a global far from equilibrium phase change. And I believe that it's going to result in the dissipation of our existing governments. And we're seeing weather pattern changes. We're seeing migration changes. All of the interfaces between humanity and our environment are now fluctuating to extreme degrees. So from weather to humanity to finances, everything to consciousness, everything's going crazy. And it's either going to result in a collapse or a jump to a new level of cooperativity and higher intelligence, where the world will no longer be dominated by the blips, but rather be dominated by the flips and a cooperative, positive spirit, where heaven on earth is really, you know, the kind of attitude that we will have if the transition goes the right way. But I can tell you from everything I know, the transition is happening right now. And I work with a man who has solved many of humanity's future problems in creating new energy, clean energy solutions that I can't go into it all, but I can tell you that they are being implemented. And within the next few years, shit's going to be very, very different than it is now. I am 100% convinced about that.
I've got a question that I'd like to ask just everybody and the people who are listening as well. Everything is connected. The entire world, it's all connected. There's no question about that. And what I think is happening is Earth is a living creature. And right now she's trying to shake the infection of man loose. And what she's doing by making marijuana available and opening it up right now is offering us a chance to come to ourselves and wake up and realize the harm we're bringing to her. And then it'll be, once that could happen, and I think this is probably a chance that she's offering us. And I think she also offers us all the psychedelics, the mushrooms, the peyote, and all the things that you can take towards the end of waking us all up, so we will stop shitting on her and hurting her and ruining her, because she's providing life, oxygen, and everything. And all these other signs are her saying, hey, look, things could be this way, could be that way. Hey, so why don't you smoke a joint and rethink that idea of starting a new acid factory on the Amazon?
Well, I'll take it a step further and say that, you know, we're all born and we use very little percentage of our brain, and whether it's psychedelic or cannabis, specifically cannabis, I think what it's doing for humans is linking us into the global consciousness, the global grid, if you will. And as we know, we're all in one, but we have this intimate separation as humans. And then we've tried cannabis for the first time, where you try psychedelics, and then you're linked in, right? And now we're linked in a different way. And plants express this, and you see birds expressing this. You see it in nature. And like Dr. Bob said, it's like it's if you're using 3 to 6% of your brain, think about the capacity and where we could actually take it. And so these things are awakening us, but they're connecting us. And that's the fear that other people don't want the masses to do. Because once we start connecting and we start thinking and producing as a one unit, it gets scary, because there's small people in power of large amounts of people.
Tony?
Yes.
Could I interest you in the idea that we use 100% of our brain, but not so much of our mind? It's the mind that is the problem. It uses the brain. The brain's a calculator, but people's minds refuse to use it all. And so that's where that misnomer comes from, that we don't use 100% of our brain. I refuse to believe that we don't use 100%. I think it's just the mind. You know, the heart uses the brain and the mind as a calculator to interface with reality. And when you get people that just use the mind, you get very evil people, because you've got to have this mix. The heart is the voltage regulator of all that. And as your heart and mind opens, your mind will start using more and more of your brain. It's all there available, though.
I agree that we use what we have because that's how we got to where we are. But again, these reorganizations that occur phylogenetically are nonlinear. So what we're about to participate in is a nonlinear change in the collective human consciousness. All we are quantized probes in adaptability in the big chemistry set, where human chemistry is a component of a bigger chemistry set. When we are just probes in adaptability, nothing more. Everything else is illusion.
We're fond of illusions, though. I mean, that's how people talk themselves into blowing them. They blow themselves up and burn themselves to death because of illusions. You know, the illusion thing is a powerful changer in mankind. It's more powerful than any drugs or anything. It's the mind again. And the mind is what creates everything. You make your world every day by how you really feel about yourself and your mind. And if you feel that you're going to fail, or you're not going to do this, or you won't be able to do that, the elite introduce the idea all the time that we only use a small percentage of our brains. I'd like to slap a few of them. Maybe one day we could get to the point where everybody gets high, and then we look around and see who's not there. Then we go find them and drag them out fucking side in the sun, and we can have a good look at who's been running things.
Well, yeah, I think that it should be mandated that our law enforcement and our governments test dirty. Rather than we've selected for the wrong people. We've selected for the blips who are cannabinoid deficient, because who else is going to become a cop that's going to be piss tested?
The blips don't dip. Go ahead. I just said the blips don't dip, as in Terpene.
Oh yeah, but that's it. The whole deal is here. The world is run by backward-looking people. They've created a box that they call reality, and that box is supported by the FDA and the military and the police force, etc. When we need, instead of flowing harmony of a communicative and creative society, where we are now embracing what we were selected for, which is adaptability, which is cooperation. We've taken a wrong turn because it's the angry, aggressive people that have dominated. They naturally rise to the surface. But, you know, even the Bible says the meek shall inherit the earth. And that's what we're undergoing, this change now that's going to occur as a combination of the cannabis awakening along with the inanimate world of the geniuses that are creating these future alternate energy that are totally clean, that are going to be manifest over the next few years.
Well, Dr. Bob, once in India, I heard a very high and wise guru say that two things rise to the top: the curds and the turds. And so, you know,
but also
what we have
cream.
to do is start. Well, yeah, everything floats to the surface, so we just have to start getting rid of the turds is the problem. And they've managed to get in a position of power because they keep telling everybody they know what they're doing, and we keep buying into that bullshit because responsibility is not something human beings love to embrace unless there's a huge paycheck or you know, Attila the Hun kind of reward.
That's where this experiment that they've created now becomes so totally important, because they're going to be on one side of health because of their primitive thinking. And the people who have open minds are going to be on the other side of health, the side that is healthy. So you're either going to fight evolution or be with it.
Dr. Bob, what percentage of the population do you think are smoking cannabis or taking cannabis, you know, supplying extra cannabinoids to their endocannabinoid system?
Well, you got to remember.
Versus what percentage aren't? Aren't the vast majority not doing it? And aren't they going to slow down the evolution of the universe?
No, because what's happening because of this experiment, look, you're going to have people who are extreme like the knockout mouse, right? They're really on high. And then you're going to have people who are more on the other end who are like tripping all the time, you know? And in between, you have people that can go either way. So they've been indoctrinated by the bullshit. So their box, they've embraced the box. And there's the rest of us using psychedelics, et cetera, that are opening the box and seeing that this is insane, that we locked ourselves in the house all this time when the world is outside of us. So that transition is going to happen because of health. They've made this experiment between federal support of pharmaceuticals and state support of cannabis. And that experiment will create the change and the bifurcation. And we'll see who's who and who's where.
Well, I was just really wondering the percentages. Do you think more than 10% of the planet actually consumes cannabis?
I hope so.
They don't have to, because, for example, every doctor on the planet, pretty much in Western, will tell you to take omega-3s and fish oil because they're good for you. Well, why are they good for you? Because they make pot. That's how our endocannabinoid system makes our endocannabinoids. So the knowledge is already shifting and will shift the population. The fact that ketogenic diets are helping people lose weight and be healthy. The fact that we can, eliminate the need for insulin and chemotherapy, and all of that is going to shift with an accelerating rate those who can be shifted. And a critical level is about to be reached where the planet will change.
Well, don't you think people are starting to notice the fact that seems to have bypassed everybody? They talk medical cannabis doesn't do any good for you and so forth and so on. But I've stipulated and maintained for the last 30 years, it's very, very difficult to feel depressed, fucked up, or hurt and be high at the same time. And
unless you're too high.
Well, okay. but all I meant was as a palliative, as a relief for these other things, once you take it, it's very hard to be on the other side of the field. And okay, Todd is getting ready to slam me. So
No, John, I'm not. You know what it was is when Bob was speaking, it made me, I've been an advocate of hemp seed oil in our diets for a couple decades because of the work of Jack Herer in his book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And I've not really thought about the fundamental role that EFAs played in our own endocannabinoid system, and Bob just kind of made me think, wow,
they're the building blocks.
It doesn't surprise me, that the cannabis plant that gives us cannabinoids also gives us a seed that's the richest in the actual EFAs that cause us to be able to produce these on an organic level, because that's exactly what you're saying, right, Bob?
Absolutely. And now that's becoming recognized.
So everyone listening should go out and so everyone listening should, forego the fish oil and go straight to the source and consume large quantities of hemp seed oil and hemp seed foods, because that's where they're going to get their richest source and best balance of essential fatty acids.
Well, that's not totally true. I have to disagree with you there, Todd, because the hemp seed oil doesn't give you long chain fatty acids. So hemp seed oil in particular is very rich in short chain ones. And hemp seed oil, for example, is great because your skin absorbs it because it's the short chain.
It doesn't have arachidonic acid, which essentially is the fatty acid that you need to make 2-HGN.
No, there's more to that, though, as well, because arachidonic acid is an omega-6 fatty acid.
Right.
And depending on how that's processed by cyclooxygenase, it can either make pro or anti-inflammatory. See, this is another one of the balancing acts that was established with complexity. The EPA and the DHA, those are the really long, the 22s and the 24s, that you can't make very efficiently out of the shorter chains. And our diet, and those are the omega-3s. And 100 years ago, our diet was tenfold flipped from how we are now. Now we're taking too many omega-6s, and those can be very pro-inflammatory, whereas the omega-3s are almost always anti-inflammatory.
Right, because there are pathways that take those on to natural inflammatories like the leukotrienes and prostaglandins.
Yes, prostaglandins, thromboxanes, leukotrienes, etc.
All those downstream.
So I'm not sure what part you're disagreeing with. You're just saying that people should consume fish oil?
I'm saying people should take essential fatty acids in general and dramatically reduce their consumption of carbohydrates.
Absolutely true. Yeah, I completely concur. The thing is, though, is that I think a lot of people don't realize how nourishing the cannabis plant is in its hemp seed oil, which is legal and available at every single health food store across the nation. And if more people went out and consumed hemp seed oil instead of things like flax oil or just fish oil, or at canola and vegetable oils that don't even have balances of EFAs, they would be helping their body create the endocannabinoids that could put them in better balance. That's basically what you were saying.
Yes, but there's complications along the way. For example, all of the things we're looking at that tend to be good for you are polyunsaturated fatty acids. Then there are things, conjugated CLAs, that are found in milk, for example. I live off dairy. I love cream and ice cream and all. But it all depends on your biochemistry. But this is another interesting little fact. 6,000 years ago, man, as adults, could not digest milk. But now, 6,000 years later, Europeans and North Africans, we can. That's an extremely high selective pressure that came with the domestication of the cows. Now, was it simply because they were giving us protein? Or was it really because they're giving us endocannabinoids and anandamide in that raw milk from cows that were eating outside all the time, etc.?
Or the beta-galactosidase that you need to break down the linkage, right? You need beta-galactosidase to break down the linkage.
Dairy aside.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was just
Dairy aside, I think more people should read the book Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill by Dr. Udo Erasmus. And it has a whole chapter dedicated to hemp seed oil, and it talks about the differences in what we're discussing. And it's the best thing you can add to your diet.
The village, there's a
Dr.
village
Bob,
in
stearadonic acid a long chain or a short chain?
Stearadonic is found in olive oil, and that's it's not a long chain, but it's a long chain.
Oh no, it's found in hemp too. It's found in canola.
Yeah, I know, but it's low. It's particularly found in olive oil, if I'm remembering correctly. Higher concentrations.
If you look up canola, you'll see it.
Mm-hmm. Actually, flax is pretty. They recently found CBD in flax. I'm pretty certain. And even the lignins in flax and cannabis have therapeutic value. So we're learning more all the time.
Well, you know, I took flaxseed extract.
No, they did not find CBD in flax. That is not
CBD-like compounds.
Right. There's no CBD in flax. Cannabis is the only plant that makes cannabinoids. We can all can all agree on that, right?
Recently, that I have to look into further. I read something recently that opens a question for me that I have to look into.
The question of, do other plants make cannabinoids or cannabinoid-like compounds?
Well, there is definitely another plant, the liverwort, it's called, that makes cannabinoids, THC ring type cannabinoids.
No, it's cannabinoid-like. They're not cannabinoids.
Is that true for the liverwort?
Absolutely true.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember the chemical structures. I don't remember specifics like that.
Interesting. Well, you know, Dr. Lester Grinspoon just wrote a really good piece called Cannabinopathic Medicine, where he discusses where he feels that cannabis should kind of have its own field in medicine because all of these cannabinoids in the endocannabinoid system go back to one specific plant. There are no other plants that we know of that make cannabinoids other than cannabis.
There are other plants that produce cannabinoid effects. So they may trigger the receptors or may modulate how the receptors work. So, I mean, just because it's a cannabinoid doesn't mean it's not active for medicine use.
Absolutely, very important point because, you know, there, for example, Echinacea has a compound that's active on CB2. Curcumin acts on CB2. And in general, any plant that you look at, I'm telling you, these goodies are always going to turn on fat burning. So they're going to be very much involved with that biochemical swirl that provides the magic from cannabis.
Yeah,
so
I think it has. I think that has CBG-like compounds.
I'll have to look.
Got everybody on that one.
I like the pause. I like the pause.
That's what smoking pure CBG does to you.
Yeah, we pause for CBG here on Hash Church.
Another pause.
I'm looking up the CBG in euthanasia. I'm trying to find the plant that has other cannabinoids right now. I found it.
There's a whole bunch of them there called cannabinometrics.
Yes, correct.
Hey, Todd, I would point out that we haven't discovered all the plants in the world yet. Are the animals, are the sea creatures, are much of anything else. There's a big catalog of stuff, but nowhere near.
Dr. Grinspoon puts known in his paper. Known, all known.
For sure.
Yeah, we know we know there's a lot we don't know for sure.
They're finding new plants every day. I mean, people in the fucking jungle are finding new plants every day, and so I don't know about that. It's all known stuff. I don't buy it.
Well, not only that, but the space.
I didn't say it's all known. I said quite the opposite.
Oh, okay.
Not only that, but the Space Brothers keep bringing me new seeds.
You guys are hilarious. I love the passion and the intensity.
The Space Brothers keep bringing me new seeds.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're dumping spores all the time, I can tell you that.
Oh, shit. Dumping spores.
Listen, there's people who measured the amount of shit. You know, in the ocean, there's animals that live down at the bottom that just live off the stuff that's coming down from the top, right? You know about that.
But there's many species that do that.
Yeah, like doesn't the whole world?
I think the excuse me, but the ecosystem here on Earth is existing somewhat. You know, from space, there's so much shit dropping in on us that we just have no idea. I think we're even being seeded, although I'm drifting off into UFOs and stuff. But
yeah, well,
let me get my tinfoil hat.
Let me ask you something.
Hey guys, I just realized the time. I have to run, but it's been really wonderful. So thank you so much for inviting me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Dr. Bob. Anytime, any Sunday you feel like sharing, you're welcome to come share. Really appreciate it. We'll make sure.
Have a great day. Peace and love.
You too.
Yeah, man.
Well, I had a question. So maybe as he's going away, but it could have been a good question for him. But
go ahead. I'm listening still.
Well, okay. So we were talking about humans with the endocannabinoid system, and I wanted to talk about animals. And if humans produce them and animals produce, has an endocannabinoid system and they produce it, is there a way that perhaps we can figure out a way as we, I don't know, as a way to target cannabinoids and fats in animals and the extraction of animals, since we're eating animals and chopping them up and eating them? And is there
you want to extract the cannabinoids? The natural fats, the natural cannabinoids tend to oxidize easy, etc. And the concentrations are incredibly low. I mean, the cannabinoid system works very powerfully with very small amounts. Your serum levels are very, very low.
For example, anandamide is not active orally.
Well,
it'll be broken down right away.
I guess I was kind of
chlorine on it, make it. You can put chlorine on it, then it's stable.
I was just kind of envisioning how we've trained chickens to just lay eggs all day long. If there was a way we could figure out
the cows cannabis, and you'll have some good milk and cheese.
Right. Is that even possible?
Yeah.
There's been studies on it, and actually, they produce higher milk and it's better quality, et cetera, et cetera.
That's not all. There's a guy in Northern California feeding pigs just that, and he's selling the bacon and the ham and stuff for enormous prices, and all the reviews on it are, "This is the best ham I ever ate," and that was a Jewish guy.
I used to feed my chickens cannabis seeds. They loved it.
There's a town in China where the oldest people in the world live, and their main food source is hemp seeds. And I guarantee you, these are not FDA approved, washed with no THC, blah 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 blah. But there's a lot of evidence in a variety of ways, but that's certainly one of them as to the anti-aging properties of cannabis. And with that, bye guys.
Take it easy, Dr. Bob.
Hey, Dr. Bob.
What Bob was talking about. You're talking about Bama China, right? Oh, he's gone. Bama China is really. It is. It's Bama, China.
Get in touch with Mark.
Yes, I will get him in touch with you, Indra. I have his connection on through Facebook, actually, and I'll share some of the. I'll get him to come join our group and share some of the links that he talked about earlier, and yeah, we'll make sure we hit some of that.
What he went out on is really interesting, though. The place in China is called Bama, B-A-M-A. People can look it up, and it's fascinating because it contains the largest population of people living into their 100s, centurions, who are active in the community and still working. And the place is surrounded by native cannabis and cannabis hemp seed, and has been part of their diet indigenously for thousands of years.
Todd, is that in Yunnan?
You would have to look it up. I'm not that familiar with China. I stumbled upon it because it was about nutrition, and it was interesting to me because they were overlooking the fact that these people were consuming hemp seed, not really knowing, what's in the book, Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill, or Dr. Roberta Hamilton's work.
I was curious
from UCLA.
I was curious if it was Yunnan, because that's where in China I saw the most cannabis seed consumption by people.
Well, it's interesting. It's called Ba Ma because cannabis is called Dai Ma, and which is the great Ma, which is the great cannabis. So it's very interesting that it's Ba Ma.
I wonder if
it's located in some place I can't pronounce.
Hitting that Bama weed.
It's near Hei City, H-E-C-H-I City. I don't know the province, so. Bama, everyone should look it up because it's really fascinating. Because the truth is that hemp seed oil is a perfect food for humans to consume. It's a better balance of oil than anything we can get normally. Even flax oil is the wrong combination of LA and LNA for human consumption. I really urge people to look at the book Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill, and then look at Bama, because the nutritional, the longevity village, they call it, it's really fascinating that they're all consuming what turns out to be the marijuana seed, which turns out to be one of the best sources for human nutrition.
Yummy. Can't go wrong with the good human nutrition. You still with us there, Chimera?
Yeah, I am. I'm just working on some emails.
Nice.
Catching up after having been gone so long.
How long were you almost dying for?
Couple weeks. Really quite bad for 1 week solid, but I started getting a little bit better on the second one. I think I still might even have some kind of organism. So
I'm telling you, I'm scared of that shit, man. Coming back from Spain last year damn near killed me, and I was sick for weeks. Like I was just like, what the heck? This is some other type of shit that we don't have in Vancouver or something? You got to fly to the other side of the...
Hey, did you guys see the IACM bulletin this week in Germany? The first patient got permission to grow his own cannabis.
In Germany?
In Germany. Deutschland.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah, September 28th, the Federal Institute of Drugs and Medical Devices, an agency of the Federal Health Ministry, issued its first permission to grow cannabis for his own medical needs to a 57-year-old patient suffering from multiple sclerosis. This permission is valid until June 30, 2017.
How do you not take offense if you're also living in Germany, suffering from MS, and don't have that permission?
Well, does German law allow for, if precedence is set, to you to do the same?
I'm sure what it is this is like an interim thing. So Bedrocan is sold in the coffee shops, and there's a company in Germany called CanMed that has just got import licenses from Tweed, so they're actually bringing Tweed weed over to Germany to sell to dispensaries also. And the German chancellery, or the government, whoever it is actually in the process now of writing a domestic production law that's going to govern, domestic production and distribution for medical purposes. So Canadian ACMPR kind of law that's going to allow a certain amount of companies to start producing in Germany.
I mean, the problem isn't that they won't be allowed to so much, Etienne, as much as like in Canada, certain people figure it out and other people can't figure out, meaning it's not easy enough, it's not fair, it's not set up so you can just get it. That's the problem with
but I mean, how difficult is it? One, you've got MS, now you have to grow. I mean, that's a challenge in itself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but if someone has that ability and they want to do it, right? Whether they have someone who lives with them and is willing to do it, or it's just a huge. I mean, in Germany too, though, I think insurance is going to pay for some of that herb, so it might be also. You know, I don't think.
So their medical is supposed to come online, but I'm not as familiar with the depth of what their medical law is or what it will become. But it's supposed to be.
Okay, well, here's a joke I saw in a German magazine that shows how advanced the Germans are in thinking.
Germans don't do humor.
No. This one you got to listen to. The guy was pouring his dog a bowl of razor blades, and his neighbor came over and said, "Hey, I think that's dangerous." And the guy says, "No, I think you're thinking about chocolate."
Oh my God, that is so twisted.
Anyway, that's German humor. Just thought I'd lighten things up.
I appreciated it. It made me laugh. I liked seeing the people that didn't laugh, the way they were just like that. Because that's always so funny.
Yeah, well, never hear that in Switzerland.
Are you kidding? Swiss jokes are the most mundane fucking jokes on the planet. The guy invented a three-legged chicken, and he asked the bank for money to do that, and they gave him 1 million Swiss francs. And a year later, they're like, "Hey, where's the money back on this?" And he wouldn't answer the phone, so they drove out to the farm, and there's like millions and millions of these three-legged chickens running around. And the guy goes in and he says, "Look, you got all these chickens. How come you haven't been paying the bill?" And he says, "Yeah, you ever tried to catch one?" So that's a Swiss joke. That's a Swiss joke. And Swiss guys die laughing when you tell them that joke.
Oh God.
So, John, I got a question for you. Do you we're involved in a project over in Switzerland and looking at doing some processing for CBD extracts, and I'm wondering, do you still have your extract lab over there?
In fact, I do.
So it's still operational and available for contract production then?
No. I'd have to go there and yeah, that just, I mean, it's sitting, all the equipment is there, so forth and so on. My partner is there. Nobody there really knows how to run the machine. And I would rather sell you a prepackaged system that I could ship to you, that you could load, push a button, it does the job, push another button, and it dumps your stuff out, ready, set, go. Because the one in Switzerland is, well, it's my very first itineration of it. And I've changed many things since then. And yeah, I just, you know, I can't do a transatlantic flight anymore. I've done so many, I've flown so many miles that I'm starting to have problems when I get on plane. At age 70, you're taking a much greater chance flying transatlantic flights than other people. Sure. And so, so I don't go there anymore. But yeah, I still got the equipment there. But still, all in all, we'd rather sell you a very competent, well-made system and ship it to you. And you could do the contract work yourself because the systems come with a license to operate and use the patent.
What's the legalities of hydrocarbon extracting in Switzerland?
Perfectly fine. I was there 5 years, and you know, we had a regular above board out in the open Swiss registered company, and the regulators didn't bother us at all. In fact, we were beginning. We weren't extracting pot. We were extracting all other manner of essential oils. And the head, one of the presidents in Switzerland, they have 7 at a time, was coming to us for some specific oils that was helping their child who had a genetic disease. And so yeah, they weren't against it at all when I was there. They're very happy to do it, have it done there.
Cool. Well, maybe Mark will put us in touch offline.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed, I will.
Yeah, Switzerland's an interesting place. They got a lot going on again. They're really strict on the THC, but
what is it? 1%?
1%.
Yeah, I thought they had a higher percent than.
Yeah, it's not as strict as other places in Europe, but I mean, if you're concentrating, that's when you run into your issues, right?
Of course.
But they're selling CBD flowers for quite a decent dollar. People are growing them indoors and selling them. So,
yeah, a judge in Switzerland said they could sell it as a flower arrangement, a dried flower arrangement, and that's how that happened.
What about the aromatherapy pillows?
Yeah, they since really locked down on all that, but people are starting to do CBD production again over there, and other cannabinoids also. As long as there's no THC in it, then you're okay.
Yeah, but the Swiss police are about as laid back and relaxed a group as you could imagine. I'm sure a lot of Swiss police must get high because I just couldn't see that not happening, because my friend who was there said he regularly sold to some Swiss police guys who viewed the THC thing as none of my business.
Yeah, well, I was talking to a farmer that was down in the south just a couple of weeks ago, and they were, they said the police used to drive by and wave to them as they were out tending their huge multi-acre fields.
Well, even when they were upset with Chris Iverson and went to his place, they gave him documents and said, we're coming back in 4 days and we're going to make sure everything's right with this crop. And that was when he had this huge, it was the size of multiple football fields out in his backyard there, up in Valhusen in the north there. But I was surprised at how chill they were. It's like, whoa, you're just going to come days before you come and tell him that you're coming?
One of the troubles with Switzerland is, of course, there is no automatic right of bail.
Right.
They just keep you.
Yeah, that sucks for sure.
Yeah, but you got to work at it to get arrested there.
Well, my friend, all he did was sell 2 million clones, and it was legal under the Swiss law because there was no THC content of. These were vegetative young clones.
Is that why Shanti Baba was busted?
No, it's not Shanti Baba I'm talking about. It's the other ones.
Oh.
Closer to Zurich, but the end effect was still the same.
Yeah, well, Shanti Baba was also selling just an insane amount of clones, like 20 or 30,000 a day, I think, at one point.
Yeah, they were doing ridiculous amounts of sales over there of not only just clones.
No, I remember the mountain of weed.
Yeah, he spent some time in a Swiss jail for it, like 18 months.
It was a Swiss jail, eh?
Yeah, it was 18 months.
When I was there, I made 880 kilos of hash, and somebody was buying it like there was no tomorrow because I could never make enough for those guys fast enough, and oil as well. They used to sell our oil under the name brand of Nutella, and they sold it not only in Switzerland but all over Europe. These guys had a huge, huge warehouse that had a bunch of dried pot that mice were living in, and had pissed on it all, and they thought it was going to be throwaway. And by treating it with liquid nitrogen, I was able to get the mouse pee out of it and make good hash out of it. And then all the leaf stuff we changed into oil. And believe you me, those guys, I mean, it was just selling like hotcakes. And I split off from them because they didn't want to pay me. They wanted me to keep doing the stuff, but they're just like, getting a Swiss guy to let go of a lot of money is one of the toughest things on the planet. They're like geckos. Their fingers just refuse.
You got to get another Swiss guy to get the money out of the other Swiss guy.
Yeah, that's it. You got that.
You get a Scottish and a Dutch guy. They can do it easy.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, Scottish and a Dutch guy. Now that's not fucking around right there.
Oh, the generalizations come out.
I love it. Actually, Chimera would like to see some fucking papers on this shit right now.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, I love you guys. You're all hilarious. Good fun, good fun.
By the way, that picture of George Harrison there is another one of my wife's pieces of work. I'll stick one up every time I'm brought on, a different painting, so you guys can look at it. And Mark posted them over on Hash Church, because a lot of people in the side thing there have asked where they're at. So anyway, that's who that is, and I appreciate it, guys.
Hey, John, who's the guy with the red shoes off on the side?
That was when George Harrison was with the I forget what they call that group, the somebody on the
Traveling
road.
Wilburys?
Yeah,
Traveling Wilburys.
That's all those guys in the background. If you saw the whole picture, it's all the rest of them are down below him.
Okay, so this is like a picture of George Harrison throughout his career, the young George Harrison.
Yeah, it's a pencil drawing that she did one afternoon, and she does a lot of work. She's very good at shading, as you can see, and yeah, she's a great artist.
Well, that definitely, I could never do that. I always appreciate the ability to be able to just draw something beautiful. It kind of, for me, it is almost like a musical instrument, being able to just have, do whatever you want with this musical instrument and really sort of put out this incredible music. I've never been able to do either of those two things, like really draw impeccably or master an instrument, but I'm still young.
Drawing on the Left Side of the Brain. It's a great book to pick up, and it'll show you how to actually do that. I'm a self-taught artist myself, so I went to art school.
Just turn everything upside down and draw it, and you can draw it.
It teaches you that. It actually shows you, like, when you do a self-portrait, is you don't draw looking at yourself because you see yourself. You turn it upside down, so you're just drawing the geometric shapes, and therefore you actually get a better drawing that way, starting off that way. So it just gives you little daily tries and little things to do along the way that helps build you up into, if you want to be like, their realist, artist. She's definitely has a deft touch at shading, etc. She's definitely has a lot of talent.
Hey, Mark, you do have, not being able to feel the idea of expressing music. I'm sorry you don't have that, but you do put people together. And that's a great talent. And maybe someday you'll cry from the results of that. I mean, I play guitar and keyboards, and I've brought myself to tears through expressive music many times. And I've always appreciated it because it's really an unloading kind of thing if you've got the kind of brain that works overtime. And
it's not...
it allows you to tap into areas which you don't even know you're tapping into, or how you just do, and that's a wonderful thing about musicianship and playing. Right there, Dr. Scialdone.
Yeah, I would go insane if I couldn't express myself by improvising music. I play music every day of my life, and if I did not play music, if I did not have a musical creative outlet, I would go insane.
Well, you're gonna enjoy life a lot more because, when I was in Southern California and we were growing pot up in high desert, and my wife was pregnant with my first kid, I had a sitar, and I would go and sit in the garden every morning for 2.5 or 3 hours playing the sitar, and it would bring both of us to tears. And my sons are the most peaceful people on earth. The first one that was born, I mean, he just doesn't know anything about fighting, or anytime he's anywhere where all that's going on, he brings a great calming effect over it. And I attribute it to the fact that she smoked with all the kids. In fact, my nickname for her is Smokestack Lightning. And he smokes more. He can smoke anybody.
You mean when she was pregnant, not like she was smoking with the kids?
I mean, no. And when my daughter got 13, then she was smoking with the kids.
That's what I thought you meant.
No, but that's not what I mean. She was smoking from day one. Annie smoked since I met her 30 years ago until today without ever taking a break, as far as I know. And she produces those paintings and pictures, and so it can't and all the kids are very creative. My one son is a math genius, got an offer from MIT to attend. He was studying calculus in the 9th grade. And so I don't think having all those cannabinoids in the system had any deleterious effects whatsoever.
No shit. Potentially the opposite.
I've had a friend of mine who's had 10 different kids and all were conceived under cannabis. And he would say, you know, cannabis was never the problem. But I agree. I think that, you know, musical outlets, creative outlets, for myself, I play music. I have an obnoxious collection of ukuleles. I love playing music. It's my release to, as opposed to I used to draw, etc. I got really addicted in college to the, because I was a self-taught artist, I never had timelines or I had deadlines. And I got addicted to the deadline and getting really creative right before the deadline and literally having all these creative outpouring of energies, et cetera, and after I got back from the war, I just gravitated strictly toward music and kind of gave up drawing, and it was more of my own self-creative outlet to where I could tap into the collective unconscious myself, or and just be there in a whole other type of meditation. I would mindset almost. And by tapping into that, I think is very peaceful and very therapeutic to all souls, especially, you know, that playing it or those around it or that have influence. So it's a very beautiful gift. I'm humbled to have it. And
you know what? You know, our brains are very amazing things. And when a bell is rung in the room with other bells in it, they'll all vibrate. And when you're playing the music, you're vibrating your brain and you're affecting everybody around you and you're affecting your environment because our brains are ringing that very same tone. That's why people love concerts. They go there and everybody changes into a bell.
That's a beautiful analogy.
I love ringing my bell. Not gonna lie. Dun.
I've had it rung once or twice.
Absolutely. What was I going to say in regards to music? Oh, in regards to music and emotional outpour. The first time I ever cried from music was at a Zakir Hussain concert. Zakir Hussain, and he had some incredible people, the crazy, I wish I remembered his name, famous flute player, and he had Ravi Shankar on the sitar. And it was basically just this incredible music, you know, all like masters of their instruments. But watching those guys do it definitely brought tears to my eyes. I recorded that show as well on my little DAT recorder. So it's always nice every once in a while to go back and get the hair to stand up on my neck and arms.
If you ever watching Ravi Shankar and Khan playing sitar and tablas together, the looks on their faces are enough to make you go into a spasm of joy.
Oh, yeah.
See Ravi Shankar, he cries and hit the smile on his face. I've seen him play in person 5 or 6 different times. Always been sitting right up in the front. I was there at the Monterey Pop Festival in the 2nd row of seats right behind the stage, and that was the first place I was filled with tears of joy. I was young. I was 5 while I was there, and seeing his face just made me cry like a baby the entire time. But I didn't care because everybody else around me was crying and had the same vibration. You know, it was joy. It was unadulterated, pure joy. And feeling that is the greatest palliative to stress and things that are going on in your body that ever existed.
Oh yeah, I played live when I had a punk band back in the day. I remember playing and singing. I was playing bass and I was singing, and I was the first time I astral projected literally out of my body. I literally left my body, shot up into I don't know where, but I just remember trying to hold the note vocally and play bass at the same time, and then coming back into my body, and it was the most amazing experience that I had put myself through. It was beyond enlightening. It's still amazing. I still think about it all the time.
That sounds pretty intense.
It was absolutely intense. And yeah, playing bass is tough alone live, and playing bass and singing has its own little difficulty to it. But I don't know, I hit this certain note and this certain tone, and I hit them both, and they went harmonically, and that harmonic trigger just caused the top of my head to just pop off, and I don't know where I went, but I went quicker than I ever went on DMT. That's for sure.
Nice. Very beautiful.
That's pretty amazing because I tried DMT once, smoked a little bit in the pipe with somebody, and kabang. I mean, I didn't even get the whole pipe inhaled. I had about halfway through it, and all of a sudden, all around the room, I saw that everybody had a mandala above their head and below their feet, and the mandalas were all different colors, and energy was radiating from them. And I still kept taking that hit in and taking it in. And then pretty soon this beautiful lady was standing next to me saying, don't worry, everything's going to be all right. I finally got the whole hit in and let it out, and I was sitting there and I noticed these mandalas underneath everybody's feet. It was really crazy. There was one lady in the room who had this completely black one underneath her feet. And when we finally came down 5 minutes later, that was also one of the fastest, most intense trips I ever had in my life, up and down like a fucking rocket ship.
Well, that's why it's called the working man psychedelic.
I'm telling you, man, that was like, and it's funny that she had that black mandala under her feet. Afterwards, when we came down and she walked out of the apartment, I said to my friend, "Who was that?" And he goes, "Mrs. Bad News." And I'm like, amazing.
Mrs. Bad News.
I've had some amazing experiences on DMT. Todd and I have done it together, and I've done it various times, and it's a beautiful experience. But it's amazing how fast you go and how fast you come back. It's literally within 5 to 10 minutes, and it's done.
Well, our bodies are full of DMT anyway, and so as soon as you push a little more in, and in the way that our body can take it in, because orally it has to be mixed with something else in order to be effective. But as soon as you push a little in, the whole thing sort of boils over, and that's where the experience comes from.
Orally, you just need an MAO inhibitor, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
Harmaline is definitely going to do the trick, and you can extend that experience for hours if you like.
Oh, yeah, I've had ayahuasca.
There it is.
I went to a ayahuasca ceremony in Amsterdam, which they held them there regularly. And I walked into the place, and they were holding a tantric sex class right next door to the ayahuasca thing. So I didn't get to the ayahuasca thing that day. The next day, but there was a blonde lady waiting outside, and she said, "Hey, I don't have a partner. Can you come with me to tantric sex?" And boy, they were just doing it in there. So yeah. Anyway, next day I went to the ayahuasca ceremony, and we kept taking cups of it, and I had been at the place he wanted to bring us to me was like an old bus stop. I'd been there lots of times on lots of different things. And so I kept asking them for more, and they thought, well, you probably shouldn't have it, but okay, here's another cup. And everybody was puking their guts out, and I was just sitting there having the time of my life. And I really appreciated it the next day when I went back to tantric sex class again.
Amsterdam's been good to you, John.
Hasn't it?
You go to all the good classes.
You don't find tantric sex classes everywhere, Mark. What can I say?
You've come to this conclusion?
I've never seen them here anywhere. Here, I mean, the closest thing they have to that is Craigslist. And by the way, I'm at the age where the only sex I get is when I tell somebody, "Hey, fuck you."
Oh, that's all good.
Well, tantric sex class lessons are very amazing to the person on the side thing there. You get undressed first, and your imagination can take care of the rest.
Yeah, I figured we'd all pretty much understand what's going down. I want to hear a little bit more about Morocco, dude. We saw some of those photos. How was that? What were you collecting, seeds or something?
Yeah, what awesome genetics did you see?
Not really collecting seeds as much. Am I sharing screen or no?
Right now it's you. It's your.
Yeah, okay, cool. I'm just trying to get some photos pulled up that maybe make it easier to share them. No, we didn't really collect anything, to be perfectly honest. It was all modernified.
Really?
Yeah, it was really strange going back this time. There was so much just of everything, you know, like all this Dutch stuff, and all of it was feminized. Let me pull up a couple of fields and I can show you.
Fields of feminized Dutch stuff.
Yeah, well, it was interesting to see, as far as production, when you're doing 10,000 plants on a hectare, or an acre, sorry, that's a lot of clones to take and a lot of mothers. And if you're doing multiple acres or multiple hectares, then, it gets really crazy.
Hey, there we all are. Look at us.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's better.
So it's actually, they make for great photos. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot more herb being grown in Morocco than there was before.
You can see the different color of those different varietals off in the distance.
I'm not sure what that is. I think it is all the same type. It's just either the sun or it's the soil or the watering system that's putting a difference in.
Gotcha.
Not enough fertilizer.
So here's a field, for example, or part of a field. You can see there's no fertilizer.
Right.
In the soil.
But they have a drip system, so they're running that.
Yeah, so the drip systems are the key, and that's really something that's come in over the last 5 or maybe 7 years, where people were doing more broadcast seeding by hand, just throwing it out there. And now it's like intentionally planting on the drip spot.
So they're planting in rows now.
Yeah.
Amazing. So growing it in a really shitty soil.
That's what there is. This is the Rif Mountains in Morocco. It's not an ideal spot to be doing any type of agriculture. And it's one of the reasons they let them get away with this is because they say it's one of the only things that you can grow up there.
Unreal.
So anyway, these ones, the really interesting ones in this photo, I don't know if you can see these little
bushes.
Yeah, they're little
pygmies,
Lebanese or Afghani, really a real throwback.
Some stout shrubs.
We took pictures of these because they're reminiscent of a variety of a hemp breeder from Hungary that's passed. But he developed an ornamental variety called Panorama. And so
nice name.
Yeah, and he envisioned planting these in front of your house. Right?
That's awesome.
Because we need little hemp shrubberies, Well, then you don't have to cottonize it so much.
Yeah.
I do it.
So I was bummed that I didn't grab seeds. I didn't even think of it until after, and we were already well gone from that field. But it would have been an interesting one to have.
So they're mostly New World genetics now, is what you're saying?
It's almost all New World genetics.
So mostly Dutch or U.S. varieties? What?
Yeah, a bit of both. A lot of these were like OG and sour diesel hybrids. You can
Ryan,
see
what type of pest pressure do they have over there?
There's a lot of grasshoppers. I actually got some good ones with the grasshoppers. Let me find those for you too.
But they mostly eat the leaves. They don't eat the calyxes, do they?
No, they got these budworm type things that get in and really mess with you.
Are those the same ones like we have in California that are those moths that spiral up through the buds and core them out from the inside out?
I'm not sure the same one, but there's definitely the same type of pest. They burrow right in through the top, and then they get down into the bud and eat away. But they obviously leave a big trail of shit and mush in their wake.
Nasty.
So this one's pretty cool. It's the
bunch of hippie bugs.
Yeah, this one he's actually what's going on here?
Is that the shell of one?
Yeah, it's the shell, and he's actually on the other side of the field or the other side of this picture. Let's see.
So he exercises exoskeleton.
Sorry. Are you seeing that still?
You can do it.
Yes. But we believe in you.
Yeah, so here he is right there. He's on the other side, munching away. And he really was hanging on. Like, he didn't want to go anywhere. We were kind of poking him, but he didn't want to go anywhere.
Are you automatically assuming that bug's gender?
Yeah, I am, actually.
Dude, you can't scare hippies off from joints. What makes you think you're going to scare a bug off of one?
Yeah, he looks baked.
That grasshopper has chosen wisely.
He's got striped eyes.
Yeah.
One of them stripe eyes.
What are we using? Do you have a camera when you're over there?
Yeah, I brought a camera, but those are actually taken with my phone.
No, he drew all these, Etienne.
I was trying to find out whether Canon, Nikon, iPhone.
I'm just being a dick.
No, those were actually iPhone photos, believe it or not.
I believe it.
Did you see those crazy sunglasses that grasshopper's wearing? Striped up and down?
Yeah, those are Yeezy.
Hey,
Those are Kanye West's newest product of grasshopper sunglasses. They're all the rage, John. You got
Ryan, show the catch basins where they catch water.
Yeah, let me see if I can find a good one of those. Trying to remember on what day it was.
So there's no running rivers or streams or no natural water for them to tap into?
No, well, I'll show you some of the pictures down the way. There are.
Are they using hydroponic solutions, or what are they using?
Yeah, no, they're pumping water usually into reservoirs, and then they're adding nutrients, like hydroponic type nutrients. It's hard to see in these ones. This one, there's only one you can see, but look off to the right here. There's this massive pool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, and these are like something that have really popped up in the last 5 years. I never saw them before at all.
That is huge.
No, they're massive. They're
well, look
absolutely...
at it. There was a huge mansion in that same picture, and it was dwarfed by that thing.
Well, listen, anywhere that there's pot, there's a mansion. Anywhere that there's money, they're growing pot, okay?
Yeah.
So,
sounds fair.
Yeah, well, but like here, for example, here's a huge one too.
Looks like pot and watermelons.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Found a watermelon in one of the fields, just a volunteer growing. So
they're just plastic or rubber lining, just
yeah, they're using these rubber. They're digging these big holes up and then using the dirt that they're pulling out to build big berms. And they're really high support, but they line them. And let me just go in with these ones. They line them with this rubber barrier, and they seal it all up, and then they hold the water. And it's really, they say that it's for collecting rainwater, but the reality, what they're doing is they're picking it up in the spring when the water table is high, and they're pumping out these huge, holes essentially for themselves to make it through the summer. And then when the aquifer runs dry in the summer, they still got their water.
Do they cover them at all, or they're leaving them exposed?
No, they don't cover them.
Wow.
They don't cover them. So that's, it's just part of the insanity of renegade farming up in the Riff.
But it looks like they dig them deep and narrow, which minimizes surface area, and you're going to lose the evaporation. If you keep the surface area down, it doesn't evaporate as much, It's like putting water in a bottle and putting water in a pan and sticking them both outside. The pan's going to dry up way before the bottle.
Absolutely. It would be, I saw the same ones in Holland beside the greenhouses and the greenhouse complexes, and the smart Dutch farmers are, they've got them covered.
Are they vegging cloning these, or putting these straight out as seeds?
No, these are seeds, but they're being germinated in greenhouses, like big greenhouses. You can't actually see it in these ones. Actually, you can. Look on the back of this one. See, there's a hoop on the roof?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are probably for starting seeds.
So they're popping them up there and then putting them out.
Yeah.
Nice picture.
It's time the seeds went the other way, huh? We got them from them first, and now they get the hybrids back over there. A lot of people I know are importing seeds back towards Europe from here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's what's happening.
Seeds are still.
Yeah, well,
seeds are something you can still send through the mail and be relatively assured that they'll arrive. A friend of mine sends a lot of seeds, but he also has a bead business, and he mixes the seeds in with the beads and sends them, and he's never had anybody intercept or
so you can't send
like
a full plant, is what you're saying?
Well, these are all, like I said, these are feminized, and these guys are deciding to plant them instead of clones for production.
Of course, less chance of getting a bunch of males.
Well, no, clones would be there would be an equal chance of these feminized seeds, probably even less chance of getting males.
Well, that's true. I meant
it's just clone. It's just
by
seeds
planting unknown seeds. You take a mix, and if you have feminized seeds, you're always going to get female plants. That's what I meant.
Yeah, it was just interesting to me to see that these guys. You can see by the rows. You can't see it in this photo, but in a lot of them, you can see their rows. They're grown in real rows, right? And it's obviously just a sign of real agriculture, right? And they've adopted the feminized seeds like no problem. They're really obviously quite happy with them.
Ryan, are you able to show the hash making process? Because sure, the viewers on Hash Church would love that, especially if you can show that video.
Yeah, what you got, man? Come on, we've seen.
So
we see
all of this product is intended for
we've seen all this pre-processed stuff, as the kids call it.
So this all ends up in the Morocco market as hash?
Well, there's no market, no, per se. You know, it's completely illegal. The hash trade is completely illegal. The growing is one thing, but the actual hash trade is like really fraught with hurdles to get this hash to Europe. Okay, so the people that are doing it are really quite organized, and the way that it used to be, more renegade style, people from Europe or wherever going up and buying a few kilos in a taxi, you know, those days are kind of over.
Moving that shit by the pallet.
Yeah, they're very organized in how they're moving it.
Well, it's pretty easy to buy the police department in Morocco.
Yeah, but there's a lot of different police departments. Okay, so let me just set this up. You can see what he's doing. They've got a big bag of cannabis that holds probably like, I don't know, 100 pounds maybe. It's really dry, but it's just bud. And in this other bag, it's a long kind of snake-shaped bag, they've got a big basin inside it with a screen tied over the top, and that's that black material.
Are these sun-dried buds?
Yes. Yeah, they tried doing it the other way, but as Sam was saying earlier, the
modern drying techniques didn't apply well to the end result of the hash.
Gotcha.
So,
and it's all about the end result.
Yeah. So this is all produced dried outdoors, and then they bring it in and well, anyway, I'll show you. I'll let it run. So they essentially fill this bag. They fill this bag with the bud, and they just put a bunch of it on the screen. And I'm just going to jump ahead because it's this is uncut. So you can see here, they end up with a bag filled with bud on top of the screen over another container. And I'll just let the video run, and you can see exactly what they do.
Tap, 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 tap.
The two sticks tap?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is so cool because they're actually making music while they're making hash, which is spiritual on a whole new level, right?
Well, an old world level.
Old world level, but on a whole new level, right?
I don't think this is new.
So you can see at the end here, the bag's closed again, just like this bottom one, right?
Yep.
And so he's putting what, like an elastic around there, or some?
Yeah,
sort
it's just
of
to hold it
bungee?
tight.
This is the sound that you can hear from many a building around Morocco during harvest season, I suspect.
This is actually more towards January.
January.
When everything's really dried up. I mean, they're in no quick hurry to sell this year's crop. Apparently, they've got lots and lots stashed from previous years.
That's what I would think.
They're way overproducing the market in Europe.
Wow.
Well, that's because they're having trouble getting into Europe more and more every year.
Yeah, also the European market has changed. It used to be really hash desiring culture, and now probably 80% of the customers want flowers.
Really? Wow, that is a significant change, because when we were originally into this, you could, flowers were very difficult outside of the Netherlands.
Wow. Why do you think that changed?
It's just this, like North America, it's the same way. I mean, at one point in time in the 80s, it was all hash. There wasn't a lot of, good domestically grown pot, and more people have learned how to do it, and it's changed the taste of the market.
The problem in the Netherlands is in the coffee shops, it's easy to get cannabis that's over 20% THC. Whereas hashish, most of it is only 15 or less. Most of the imported hashish is poor quality. So, yeah. I mean, you can make good quality hashish, but most hashish farmers make more hash, not more better hash.
So how long do they actually beat this drum?
Oh, not long. I mean, maybe another couple of minutes, and then they take it off and they dump the spent herb into the bottom of this bag, and then they essentially just load it again, and that way they can track how much herb went in, how much resin came off, and they also trap it for another run through.
Do you know what micron that screen is?
I have no idea. It is probably somewhere between 160 and 200.
That's what I would guess.
Most likely like a silk screen or something.
Do you have a picture of the hash that comes out of that, Ryan?
Let's see what we got here.
So is that like a stainless steel bowl they're using or a ceramic lined bowl?
No, it's just a plastic wash tub. Let me see. Where's the... There you go.
A little cake there.
There's a little bit of hash.
Yeah.
Do they know about rosin?
Oh yeah, man. This is
They're all over it.
So I'll show you. This is actually a friend of yours, so you know who it is, but I'll tell you later.
Yeah.
But this is some of the rosin they're making.
Go 3 pictures over. Yeah.
So they know about it. They're squishing it up. That's
some nice squishy.
It's really sappy. Like you wouldn't. There's actually, I don't know. I have the picture in here, but
does it have much of a scent or no?
It's kind of beta-caryophyllene, like Moroccan hashy smelling. It's not as floral as I'd like it to be, but I mean, it would be perfect for Blue River, kind of additions. But it's really sappy. It's really like runny.
Are they making their own, what are they just heating plates and pressing, or what are they using?
Yeah, he's got some plate system that they've brought in. He's kind of doing same kind of thing as everybody else does. It would be too difficult to get in, say, like a Sasquatch or something like that. Sasquatch. It's not easy to get things into Morocco.
You just need a professional, man. We can get one in.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I'm joking.
They'd be happy to have it there. Apparently, there's people running, extraction laboratories and everything up there. So,
damn,
those are some beautiful little hash balls.
Yeah, one of our compadres rolled them all up. He just started playing, and the next thing you knew, we couldn't tell which was which.
Did you get to sample of them?
Oh yeah, we tried them all.
And
it's hashish. I mean, for sure. We were dabbing the best stuff. Let me see if I can find the very best stuff that we smoked, or that I thought we smoked. It was these. And these, I didn't get very many great pictures of them, but these are
powder.
Yeah, it's turned into powder, but this is actually a former Legends Cup winning hash.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
It's just, I think, about 3 or 4 years old at this point in time.
Yeah,
I think I smoked that one there.
I've got cotton mouth just looking at it.
a couple of times, in fact.
Got a temple buff for you, Etienne, that you will enjoy that I made.
I would love to try.
I got one.
That looked really nice too, right there, Chimera. That looks like some sugary shit.
Yeah, that looks nice and gooey.
It does, doesn't it?
Looks terp rich.
Did you bring a little terp rig or something?
No, someone had a dab rig down there, and that's what we were hitting on for the most part. So, and then
the tech is spreading around the world. There it is. There you've got dabs and rosin right there.
Oh yeah, there's no stopping that. Awesome. Information you can see. I mean, up there it was even straight out of Compton, right?
So, are there any dominant genetics that most people are growing around there? Or it's just whatever they get their hands on.
These guys were growing Candy Kush hybrids, I think they were.
That was an empty reservoir?
Yeah, well, it was well down. These were interesting. These were male plants, but they had a highly feminine structure.
I think that is the coolest picture.
That is really nice male shot.
I think it's fucking an amazing male.
Yeah.
I've grown thousands of males.
You would know, Sam.
That male might be a little confused with its sexuality.
Yeah, and so we I think Rob got a little bit of DNA from it, so we'll see if that makes it in one of the Phylos projects.
Is it a gender fluid TH?
Well, one of the old hemp breeders that used to develop these unisexual varieties, he used to say that there was, it was kind of a spectrum. So you have male plants that are male-like, which is what we were most used to seeing, but then there's also male plants that are female-like. And the reverse is true. There's female plants that are female-like and female plants that are male-like.
Yeah, by like he means in structure. In other words, big, chunky is female, long and spindly is male.
See, I thought we were starting to get off into lesbian gay stuff here for a minute there.
No, but if you're an expert, please explain it.
I'm not an expert. I have found in recent times nearly all of the flowers I've tried from different shops and people, invariably somewhere along the line I will find one small little yellow flower in there that will tell me the story that plant has definitely got some male stuff wandering around in it. And it's very common these days. Sometimes growers don't even know. I had a friend who was growing and was on and on and on about it, and he brought me over a huge bud, and when I was pulling it apart, I found 2 male flowers deep buried in the bud, but there they were.
Yeah, some genetics actually do that depending on, and so I do know growers who have certain varietals that they pick before those start or right as those start to appear.
Intersex can also be genetically controlled like male and female, so it could be a third intersex, or it can also be controlled by environmental stresses.
Yeah,
so
we know
too dry, too fucked up photo period, then it will express intersex.
Yeah, and we know that we can manipulate the sex of plants by using hormone treatments that that affect the ethylene pathway. So everybody knows about this STS that they use for blocking. You spray STS on a female plant and it'll produce male flowers. Okay, so if you do the reverse and you spray ethylene on a plant, a male plant, it'll produce female flowers. So ethylene is one of the 5 major plant hormones that exist in plants, and it's these massive regulating hormones are subject to all sorts of triggers. So, for example, drought stress or pH stress or photoperiod stress or whatever, nutrient stress even, they can cause changes in ethylene. So we know that if ethylene changes, you can alter the sex. It's really common. That's why it's so common to see in cannabis that
But you can stabilize the sex, you're saying?
Well, there's some plants that are more resistant to. There's some plants that are more resistant to these environmentally induced triggers, and they won't produce differently gendered, flowers on the same plant under those same stresses. But
eventually there will be markers, and people will be able to test any given clone or seed variety with a marker system, and they'll be able to see possibly gene-linked ones or stress-linked ones once these markers are actually designed and developed.
I was about to say identified, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is anybody pardon me, just one second. Is anybody actually working on actively identifying those?
I think several of the large companies are working on it, but I don't know how close they are.
Yeah, they're McKernan's group, and I think Maugley's group also from Phylos and Medicinal Genomics, respectively, they're working on these gender tests, and so part of that is looking at the Y chromosome or spots on the Y chromosome and seeing that they can figure it out. But some of the work that's been done in hemp shows that the monoecious hemp varieties, the hemp varieties that have plants of both genders on the same plant, are actually genetically female plants. So,
stress plays a huge role in all this.
What it really boils down to is that you can test a male and be pretty sure you're correct. If you test one and it pops up female, that doesn't mean it's not monoecious or intersexed.
Yeah, it's a separate trait. So intersexuality is a separate trait from gender. Gender is essentially male or female, and male or female as defined not by if you have a female flowers, it's designed by whether you have a Y chromosome or not. So to me, plants that have Y chromosomes are male. Plants that don't have Y chromosomes are female.
Correct.
Well, you know, human beings have both sets of chromosomes, and I've noted over a period of time that we're subject to the same kind of stress stuff that the plants are. You put too many rats in a cage, and you start getting all the aberrant or so-called aberrant behavior patterns out of the rats, and you thin them out, and it goes away. And so you get enough rats in the cage, and males start fucking males and female, and that's what goes on. The aberration of stress causes all these aberrant behaviors across the board, not just in the plants.
I was just reading about this in the rat utopia that was created. These researchers tried to create what they thought was a rat utopia and what it devolved into. Very fascinating.
We should get the rat lady back on again, Mark.
We will absolutely. You know what? Natasha's awesome, and I just spaced inviting her. She's always willing to come and share. I'll make sure she comes on next week. And I'll tell you, it's been almost 4 hours of wonderful discussion. I myself am thankful for all of you to come and share your time. As always, Dr. Bob was a real pleasure to have on. I loved his outlook, and his perspective was appreciated. Always a pleasure to have Skunkman Sam and INDRA, as well as Todd McCormick and Tony Verzura. Super pleasure to have Chimera. I know you're super busy and you're not able to get in all the time, dude, so I do appreciate that. And of course, Etienne and Mark Scialdone and Johnny B and D420K, and we saw MC West had a quick come in for a quick few questions today. Thank you, everyone, for watching Hash Church, all thousands of you that watch every week. We sure do this for you, and it's amazing that you give us this ability to have a platform where we can share and get this message out. So I do appreciate everyone for sharing in their time with Hash Church 106. I'm going to call it a day, and thank you all. We will see you next week for Hash Church 107.
Much love, everybody.
Peace, everybody.
Thanks, all. Thanks, Mark.